Chapter 102. Yin Yang's serene smile was like an active volcano that was about to erupt, completing its final preparations. It was the last moment of silence before the eruption. Actually, I really missed those simple-minded and simple-minded days. We only thought about winning and killing our enemies. We would never consider the turbulent undercurrents beneath the peaceful world. Perhaps only eldest brother, would think about it. Back then, eldest brother held my hand when he was on the verge of death and said, "OL ninth, if you can go back alive, be an executioner outside the law." Perhaps at that time, Boss had already seen the devastation of this country, the hidden tumors and acne on its body. Or perhaps eldest brother had seen the turbulence in the dark and wanted to save my life. Once Supreme Cloud's identity is exposed, he would die without a doubt. Yin Yang sighed and took out his will. It was a strange feeling for a living person to read his own will. There was only one sentence in Yin Yang's will. "I don't know who I am and I have nothing to worry about, so there's nothing else." Yin Yang smiled, thinking that if his brothers read his will, would they laugh or cry? "I really don't know who I am." The will that belonged to Yin Yang slowly turned into ashes in his hands, turning into a puff of green smoke and disappearing from this world. "Old Dugu, this is my father, help me take care of him. Let him enjoy the rest of his life, and take care of him in my place." This was seventh brother Supreme Blood's will. Other than the instructions that his brothers had, there was also this sentence about himself. Yin Yang felt a throbbing pain in his heart. The token of gratitude in front of his chest was like a piece of charcoal, burning his heart painfully. Sixth brother Supreme Lightning's will. I was chased out by my family. 8 innately awakened chakras, saying that I'm useless. I can't cultivate my family's cultivation method. My biological parents are dead, so I was chased out by eldest uncle. If I die, if any of my brothers are still alive, if there's a chance, go and burn incense for my parents. Tell them that their son went to look for them, and that they died too early, causing their son to be bullied. I forgot to mention, my family is in the bound of universe, the Lei family. As for helping me vent my anger, forget about it. The Lei clan is too powerful. Anyway, I've been living my life happily. If I hadn't been chased out, I wouldn't have met you guys. If you guys really help me vent my anger, and end up dying in battle, I won't recognize you guys in my next life. Live well. I Lei Mufeng, haven't lived a wonderful life yet. Live it for me. Yin Yang's gaze was fixed on the will. Supreme Wind's words seemed to play out in front of him. OL6 seems to be a descendant of a noble family. But what kind of family was this Lei family? How could someone with 8 innately awakened acupores be called trash? Would he even be chased out? In the entire empire of Yutong, people with 8 innately awakened chakras were rare, even if they were not the only ones. That was the gift of an unparalleled prodigy. How did he become trash in the Lei family? I only had 7 innately awakened chakras when I obtained the golden lotus of fate. If sixth brother was a good-for-nothing, wouldn't I be worse than a good-for-nothing? Also, where was the bound of universe? He had never heard of such a place in the Tianxian continent. With the 9 Supremes Intelligence Network, it was truly inconceivable that he had never heard of such a place. The bound of universe, Yin Yang murmured. Sixth brother, don't worry. If I'm not capable enough, I won't provoke the strong. However, if this young brother's capability reaches that level, I'll still wipe out the Lei family and help you vent your anger. As long as I'm not injured or dead, you have no reason to say that you don't know this young brother, right? Also, leave the matter of burning incense for our parents to me. Once I find out, I'll send you to reunite with your parents. Yin Yang looked at Supreme Flame's will that he had yet to open. What would fifth brother say? Thinking of Supreme Flame, of Yun Zuiyu, of Yin Yang's heart ached like it was being cut by a knife. If I die, help me take care of Zuiyu. Supreme Flames will contain a tinge of passion amidst the calmness. Zuiyu is a stubborn lady. All of you know her. Whether I live or die, she'll always be my wife. Call her sister-in-law when you see the elder, sister-in-law when you see the younger. If you don't acknowledge her identity, she'll follow me. After 8 to 10 years, when her heart has calmed down, think of a way to give her a share of family happiness. If she finds a good home, None of you are allowed to disturb her. All of the 9 supremes vanish from her sight. Lest she recalls the past and hesitates when she sees all of you. Sigh, Yunyang sighed. I'm an orphan, so is Zuiyu. Yun Zuiyu. This name was given by her later on. My name was also randomly given by myself. It doesn't matter if I say it or not. Actually, I like the name Supreme Flame the most. If I die, I only hope that my brothers who are alive can live on. Actually, I really don't want to die. I'm still thinking if I can find my parents and ask them if they abandoned me, or if they sold me, or if my parents are already long dead. Can I light incense for them? What I want the most is to hold Zui's hand and light incense in front of my parents' graves, or to find them and call them father and mother. Whether I'm abandoned or sold, I don't hate them. I'll acknowledge them and be filial to them. I don't want to die. I have a lot of things to do. None of you can do them for me. On my chest, there are 3 traces of being burned by fire, forming the shape of a mountain. If I really die, help me find my parents. Call them father and mother for me. I've never called them since I was young. I don't know if I'll cry when I do. Also, don't blame them. In such a chaotic world, sigh. Supreme Flames will end it with a sigh. Looking at Supreme Flame's will, Yin Yang thought of himself. Suddenly, there was a sense of desolation and loneliness, as if he was the only one in this vast world. The melancholy in his heart could not be shaken away. It was oppressive, almost suffocating. I have a new decision now. Yin Yang said quietly. I've taken out everything from the residents of 9 Supremes. I'm selfish. Other than us, I don't want anyone else to be called the 9 Supremes. I can't accept that. It's fine if the residence of 9 Supremes is never opened, but what if it's opened one day? Yin Yang murmured. So I've made this selfish decision. I hope you won't blame me. I'm only 7 innately awakened chakras now. What I can cultivate now is only everyone's first stage, as well as cloud, wind, and fire. It's already difficult to progress with these 3 cultivation methods. I might even be worse than a piece of trash. Yin Yang said quietly. So, I need to improve my ability, so that I can unleash more power. These 2 people from the palace are too powerful. They won't be easily shaken. Yin Yang's eyes glinted coldly. But no matter how powerful they are, I'll make them and the 4 Seasons Tower behind them pay the heaviest price. The first stage of the endless divine art had been perfected while Yin Yang's mystical chi level had reached the pinnacle of the 3rd peak. The fog of cloud conjuration that Yin Yang was famous for had also been cultivated to the 3rd stage. Mystique wind conjuration and fiery charm had also been forcefully cultivated to the 3rd stage due to the previous battle. As for Thunder Crash Conjuration and Crimson Devil Conjuration, they were only cultivated to the 1st stage. However, Yin Yang had encountered a bottleneck now. It was extremely difficult to break through to the 4th stage of the cultivation method. Yin Yang, whose cultivation base had not been damaged, had cultivated Fog of Cloud Conjuration to the pinnacle of the 3rd stage before he was stuck there. Now that he had cultivated it again, it was still a bottleneck. Yin Yang knew that this was the limitation of his talent. Actually, it was not only the Fog of Cloud Conjuration, but also Mystique Wind Conjuration and Fiery Charm. After reaching the pinnacle of the 3rd stage, there was no further progress. He believed that Thunder Crash Conjuration and Crimson Devil Conjuration would be the same. That was why Yin Yang could not wait to break through to the 2nd stage of the endless divine art. Since he could awaken new chakras when he cultivated the 1st stage, there should be some benefits when he broke through to the 2nd stage. On the same night, when Yin Yang walked out, he left in the form of a cloud. Feng Mafei and Lao Mei did not know about it. Towering Wind Pavilion. This was a very strange place. Underneath the Towering Wind Pavilion was a medium-sized casino. Although it was said to be medium-sized, it could still accommodate 400 to 500 people to play together. However, this was the most famous gambling place in Tiantang City. The Towering Wind Pavilion only had a pavilion master, a major domo, and the rest were all stewards. In terms of manpower, it could be said to be weak. However, during the 4 years that the Towering Wind Pavilion had been established in Tiantang City, no one had dared to cause trouble for the Towering Wind Pavilion. The only exception had been the year before. Yun Yang had felt that he was short on money, the lack of silver taels needed to take care of the injured soldiers and the families of the martyrs. After weighing the pros and cons, he had finally decided to target the Towering Wind Pavilion. Actually, strictly speaking, Yun Yang had not gained the upper hand that time. Ling Yun and the pavilion master of the Towering Wind Pavilion had almost exchanged blows, but he had not gained any advantage. In the end, it was 8th Brother Supreme Wind who had come forward to suppress the matter, and had even taken out 10 million silver taels from the Towering Wind Pavilion to solve the monetary crisis. After that, he had specially invited Supreme Wind for a drink to ask about the mysteries of the matter. After all, he had not handled the matter well, and there were many loose ends. Even now, Yun Yang still did not know whether to laugh or cry when he recalled the incident. There was no other reason. The pavilion master of the Towering Wind Pavilion was Supreme Wind's incarnation. It was all thanks to this fellow. First, he had fought with Yun Yang with a red face, and then, after solving the problem on his own, he had shamelessly asked Yun Yang to treat him to a drink. He had done the bad guy, but he had also done the good guy. He had even lectured Yun Yang. The pavilion master of the Towering Wind Pavilion can give some compensation during the mediation after the incident, but you can never admit defeat after the incident. Otherwise, how can the Towering Wind Pavilion's unshakable reputation be maintained? Do you understand? Do you admit defeat? What could he say? What did he dare to say? Supreme Wind was really good at putting on an act. Chapter 103. Really? The mask Yun Yang was wearing now was the Towering Wind Pavilion Master's mask. After thinking for a long time, he smacked his lips. This Towering Wind Pavilion Master is really shameless. Dressed in green and wearing a unique mask, Yun Yang entered the Towering Wind Pavilion. Pavilion Master! Pavilion Master is here! Along the way, stewards came up to greet him. Yun Yang only snorted and continued walking. A figure flashed in front of him, and a young man in white clothes appeared. He was tall and handsome, and his face was gentle and refined. However, his voice was indescribably hoarse, as if his throat had been seriously injured and he couldn't speak. Pavilion Master, you finally appeared, the young man in white said. This was Supreme Wind's Towering Wind Pavilion's top general, young Master Wuyin Shui Wuyin. Yun Yang was very interested in this person, and had even seen him as a thorn in his side. This was because this person was meticulous and meticulous. He could be considered a top-notch character. However, there was only one thought in his mind now. What should I do about this Shui Wuyin? 8th brother is gone, should I tell him? This person is a talent. It would be a pity to let him go. But how can I let him stay? Do I have to continue deceiving him using 8th brother's identity? Wuyin, how's the profit during this period? Yun Yang sat down on the pavilion master's seat, his voice indifferent. It's all right. A graceful smile hung on Shui Wuyin's face. However, pavilion master hasn't shown up for such a long time. This subordinate was extremely worried. I almost ran away with the money. Yun Yang smiled. You don't care about this bit of money. Shui Wuyin chuckled hoarsely and said, Will pavilion master be staying for some time this time? Yun Yang frowned and asked, Is there anything? Nothing, but I might have to make a trip home during this period of time. Shui Wuyin said. Pavilion master wasn't around previously. This young brother dared not leave rashly. Now that pavilion master is back, this young brother will have to go back to handle those matters. Towering Wind Pavilion can close down when you return. You can reopen when you come back. Yun Yang said indifferently. How much profit have we made during this period of time? How much trouble? Shui Wuyin said. A year and a half's profit is almost 200 million silver taels. This is the net profit. 200 million taels. Yun Yang said. Send it to the bank later and convert it into banknotes. 500 and 1,000 taels in total. All right. Shui Wuyin said. As for the trouble, that big sarcoma has been causing trouble for us almost every day at the Lu within Lu Casino opposite us. During this period of time, Pavilion Master hasn't been around, so he's been suppressing a lot of things. Yun Yang frowned, a sharp glint in his eyes. He still dares to come. He hasn't been here for some time. I heard that 40 to 50 of his men were killed, Shui Wuyin said with some schadenfreude. Now that Tiantang City is heavily guarded, and the laws are even stricter, it's hard for this fellow to maintain his prostitution business. In addition to that, the last time you punished him to the point of almost hanging himself, he only has 10 to 20% of his original wealth left. His days are getting harder and harder, so he hasn't been here for the past 2 to 3 months. Yin Yang nodded faintly. Go get the banknotes first. I'll go to the tower within the tower later tonight. We can't just let him come to us, and we don't go to him. Courtesy demands reciprocity. Shui Wuyin chuckled. I've been waiting for Pavilion Master to say this for a long time. Shall I accompany Pavilion Master tonight? What are you going to do? Go get the banknotes for me now. Yin Yang gave him a sideways glance. I can go alone. Wouldn't it be too much of a bully if both of us went? Shui Wuyin chuckled hoarsely, but deep down, he had a strange feeling that something was amiss. The Pavilion Master before him was flawless, be it his physique, speech, tone, aura, gaze, movement, or habits. He was no different from how he had been in the past. However, Shui Wuyin still found it odd, because the person before him did not give him the sense of intimacy that was imprinted in his bones. There was always a sense of alienation and estrangement. Boss, do you still remember my injury? Shui Wuyin asked abruptly. Your injury is not a problem. There will be a solution very soon. Yin Yang said, don't worry. I'll be able to heal you within 3 months when you come back this time. Thank you for your concern, boss. The feeling in Shui Wuyin's heart could not be dispelled, but he did not speak anymore. On the same night, Yin Yang charged straight into the tower within the tower and swept the place up and down. He had long heard that this tower within the tower had set up gambling scams and enticed them to lend money. Once there was no money to be earned, they would force women into prostitution. In the past, he still needed this tower to fight against the towering Wind Pavilion openly. Now that he had the excuse of absorbing the air of injustice and punishing evil, Yin Yang no longer planned to let this tower within the tower exist any longer. In just a few moves he had subdued the big boss of Lu Wailu Tower, Lu Da, who had a big tumor on his head. With a few tricks, he had forced this guy to hand over the remaining 10 to 20% of his wealth, which could still be considered a huge amount. Then, he had this guy gather his core forces in the secret room. After making sure that there were no omissions, Yin Yang began his killing spree amidst the horrified gazes. The fresh blood of 30 to 40 people dyed the secret chamber crimson. Waves of air of injustice were kindly accepted by Emmy. When Yin Yang dusted his hands and walked out of the secret chamber, he watched as the underground chamber's door slowly closed. He channeled his cultivation to collapse the entrance above, burying the secret chamber underground. I'll let all of you be buried underground then. Yin Yang snorted. All sorts of treasures and wealth had been collected into 10 sacks. When Shui Wuyin came to help, his eyes were wide open. Boss, did you rob the tower within the tower? Shui Wuyin was stuttering. No, replied Yin Yang. Shui Wuyin was bewildered. Yin Yang said faintly, from now on, there will be no more tower within the tower in this world. Shui Wuyin was speechless. Boss, I thought you were only looking for trouble. Who would have thought that you'd annihilate them directly? We won't have a fixed source of income in the future. Shui Wuyin still felt that it was a pity. Initially, boss, whenever you feel that you're short of money, you'll go and extort them. But now, Yin Yang sighed. The problem is that we're short of money now. We have to act according to the situation. What a strong reason. I actually have nothing to say. Shui Wuyin was utterly speechless. At the end of the day, Yin Yang and Supreme Wind's personalities were quite different. Supreme Wind was cynical and could allow the existence of the dark side of the world, but these could become his tools. Yin Yang, on the other hand, abhorred evil and had always pursued the principle of eradicating evil. Once the evil deeds were discovered, they would be eliminated immediately. Moreover, his methods were extremely ruthless and clean. It was not entirely because the lotus of endless fate required the air of injustice. Both of their personalities had their flaws. It was hard to say who was right and who was wrong. Getting himself a carriage, Yin Yang said, I'll take the things away. Whenever you're going home, Just close the door and leave. There's no need to inform me. Whatever he said now was unnecessary. He could only look for opportunities in the future. Looking at Yin Yang's departing silhouette, Shui Wuin's gaze changed for a long time. He did not chase after him, only sitting down weakly. He did not speak for a long time. Ever since the arrival of the towering Wind Pavilion's master, every single detail slowly slid through his heart. Finally, a terrifying conclusion appeared in his mind. He felt that both his legs were numb, and his head was buzzing. His head was dizzy. It was an indescribable fear. "You're a fake." He looked at the empty street, and these words finally came out from his throat. "I'm not leaving during this period of time," Shui Wuin murmured. "I want to find out who you are. Why did you impersonate my boss? How did you know so much about us? How did you manage to impersonate boss so well? How did you manage to fool me? If you're sent by my boss, don't mention anything. However, if you've murdered my boss and attempted to take over his possessions, I, Shui Wuin, will not rest until you're dead." Yin Yang had felt Shui Wuin's abnormality and knew that the latter was suspicious of him. However, he had no choice but to leave now. He had no time to explain the whole story, because at this moment, the space of the divine sense had already started to turn upside down. The air of injustice from the 30 to 40 people he had just killed was beginning to take effect on Emmy. The effect was unprecedentedly huge. According to Yin Yang's estimation, at least, Emmy had enough energy to advance. The carriage arrived at a secluded corner in the dead of the night. Lao Mei and Fang Mafei appeared from the dark and began to deal with the matter. Yin Yang, on the other hand, had gone home in a flash. He did not even have the time to say anything before he went to bed. Meow. The 3 eclipse panthers that had been successfully modified by Yin Yang to meow, as well as the lightning cat, scurried over with a swoosh. Their 8 beady eyes were sparkling, obviously having caught a whiff of the restless vitality. Just as Yin Yang's deific consciousness entered his deific consciousness space, he was shocked. Although he had already expected that Emmy's extermination would greatly increase its reserves, he did not expect the entire space to be filled with a green gas that was almost completely solidified. Faced with such an abundance of life force, Yin Yang felt as if he was ascending to immortality. Seeing him enter, Emmy waved its tendrils excitedly, like a child showing off its new toy. "Come and see, come and see." Yin Yang focused his gaze and saw that the second leaf on Emmy's body was slowly unfurling as well. Its emerald green color was almost transparent. Rays of rainbow radiance flowed slowly from the lotus leaf, constantly changing its position. Emmy's tendrils had increased to 4, waving about continuously. A mysterious and inexplicable will wormed its way into Yin Yang's mind. Watching the withering of 100 men, eradicating injustice in the secular world, using evil to counter evil, heaven's will is complete. The double leaves of the golden lotus of creation are formed. Endless Divine Art Level 2 Breakthrough. Chapter 104. At the same time, Yin Yang felt a sharp pain in between his brows, followed by an intense itch. Then, it was as if something had exploded between his brows. In that instant, it was as if countless streams of energy had dispersed from the spot, spreading to his limbs and bones. Instantly, his bones seemed to have lightened. Streams of black blood flowed out of the pores all over his body. Awakening the sense acupoint, the benefits of the endless divine arts breakthrough were within Yin Yang's expectations. But when he truly felt the awakening of his sense acupoint, he still felt a tingling thrill, as if he had been struck by lightning. Innately awakened 8 chakras. This was a rare talent in the entire Tianxian continent. However, thinking of how his 6th brother Supreme Thunder had been chased out because of his 8 chakras awakening, Yin Yang spat. The bound of universe. Is it really that impressive? As the abundant life force rushed into his meridians, it rushed into his dantian. Then, after circling around for a while, it immediately surged out. Like a hot knife through butter, it broke through the barrier of the 3rd peak of Xianqi without any hindrance, and rushed into the realm of the 4th peak. Within his meridians, it continued to surge violently, advancing triumphantly. Seeing this, Yin Yang withdrew it with all his might. He would rather waste this energy in order to stop the advancement of his cultivation base. He could clearly feel that the mystical chi's flow on the path of the fourth heaven had not weakened at all. Instead, it was growing stronger. If he did not stop it, it would not be difficult for him to break through to the fifth peak with the help of this energy. It was even a matter of course. However, Yin-Yang did not want to break through to the fifth peak so soon. One mountain, one heaven. This was a description of how difficult it was to fully unleash one's cultivation base. But it was also a metaphor for the importance of one's cultivation base. He had just climbed to the fourth peak and stepped into this brand new territory. He had yet to experience the scenery beyond the mountain. If he were to break through to the fifth peak now, even if his ability would increase tenfold, it would forever leave a flaw in his martial cultivation that he had never experienced the fourth peak. Entering the realm of the fourth peak was only one aspect. Experiencing the scenery of the fourth heaven was the most important. If he did not experience it, it would only be detrimental to his future path of cultivation. Only the strong would take it. Although Yin-Yang urgently needed to improve his capability, he would not joke around with his future. Yin-Yang, who had forcefully suppressed his surging internal energy, shifted his focus to the second lotus leaf. He stared at it with wide eyes, wondering if this leaf could fall as well and turn into a rare treasure like the divine edge. However, the lotus leaf did not fall even when his eyes were weary from staring at it. Emmy's vines danced and twined around Yin-Yang, acting coquettishly. It was obvious that Emmy was very happy. He seemed to be so happy that he couldn't even speak coherently. Yin-Yang's heart melted at the sight of her infatuation. In spite of this, Yin-Yang still had a terrible premonition in his heart. The endless divine art and the lotus of endless fate were not to be underestimated. The first advancement had killed 10 people, but the second advancement would probably require 100 deaths. During this period of time, he had killed more than 120 scum. Especially tonight, he had killed nearly 40 of them in one go. It was also after this that the lotus of endless fate showed signs of advancement. The endless divine art had also advanced to the second beginner stage because of this. 100. Didn't that mean that the next time he leveled up, he would have to kill 1,000 people? Would the fourth stage not require 10,000? 100,000 for the fifth stage? The sixth stage, when the lotus of endless fate grew to its peak, would it not require the killing of billions of people? But how can there be so many wicked people in this world? Yin-Yang looked at Emmy, feeling rather helpless. Little fellow, do you really need so much air of injustice? I already feel hopeless now. Emmy only whimpered as it coiled around Yin-Yang. This is exactly why it's so difficult to complete the evolution. Hopeless is a nice way to put it. It should be hopeless. Yin-Yang heaved a long sigh, feeling the overflowing mystical qi in his body that was on the verge of bursting. Yin-Yang could not help but feel that he was omnipotent, and everything was within his grasp. The benefits of the advancement of the endless divine art did not stop at the growth of Yin-Yang's cultivation base. Following the advancement of the endless divine art, the fiery charm, mystique wind conjuration, and fog of cloud conjuration had also sped up. If Yin-Yang had not forcefully suppressed the advancement of his mystical qi, he would have long since broken through the fifth peak and reached the sixth peak. By then, the mystique wind conjuration and others would probably have soared to no lower than the fifth stage. Even when such a wonderful benefit was in sight, Yin-Yang gave it up decisively after some thought. Towering buildings are built from the ground. Towering trees take root first. The foundation is the most important. Saber truth. Destiny Blade was restless once again following the breakthrough of the second stage of the endless divine art. To Yin-Yang, however, he could only look at the benefits. Up until now, he had yet to fully comprehend the first form of saber truth, Destiny Blade. The profoundness of this saber truth had surprised Yin-Yang, but the more he cultivated it, the more he felt that it was unfathomable, as if there was no end to it. At least, to the current Yin-Yang, he was far from being able to comprehend it completely. Therefore, even when the second form fell into his hands, he had to temporarily seal it away. The most important thing now is still the traitor. Yin-Yang snorted in his heart. Just as he was about to stand up, he was suddenly stunned. Countless white fur fluttered on his body. Looking around him, there seemed to be a few more piles of them. What's going on? Yun Yang almost suspected that he had grown fur like this on his body. Turning around, he saw 4 naked and red little critters buried in the white fur, curled up into a ball and sleeping soundly. Yun Yang could not help being stunned, but he quickly came to a realization. It seemed that Emmy's advancement and the endless divine arts breakthrough had not only benefited him, but the little critters that were leaning on him had also benefited greatly. They had shed their fur en masse, and looking at the piles of them, it seemed that they had shed their fur more than once. Yun Yang could not help but look forward to it. The first to leap up with a meow was the leader of the Eclipse Panthers, Big Whitey. Yun Yang's naming of the 4 Eclipse Panthers and the Lightning Cat was very unique. Since the one he had sent out was called Big Whitey, the remaining ones were Whitey 2, Whitey 3, Whitey 4, and finally the Lightning Cat, which was naturally Whitey 5. Young Master Yun's naming sense was unique and out of everyone's expectations. Speaking of which, his standard was quite high. Big Whitey, who had been sleeping soundly, suddenly opened its misty eyes and looked at its own body. It stuck out its tongue and licked its body, tilting its head in confusion. Yun Yang almost burst out laughing at its naive behavior. The little critter jumped out and shook its body, the white fur that had stuck to it falling off. Its red body looked like it had been boiled in a pot. There was not a single strand of fur on it, making it look hideous. Meow. Big Whitey looked at its naked body, feeling wronged. It lifted its head to look at Yun Yang and meowed again, its eyes misty. What it meant was, "Meow, so ugly. Are you stupid? This fur, won't it grow out in a few days?" Yun Yang was exasperated. "What level are you now?" Big Whitey kept licking its body with its tongue, busying itself with the task. There was a white mist rising from its body. After a while, the white mist dissipated. Yun Yang was surprised to find that Big Whitey's fur had grown out again, and was even smoother than before. Big White wagged its tail and stood up. It proudly shook its body and snorted twice. Then it walked out of the window with graceful cat-like steps. Before it left, it actually rolled its eyes at Yun Yang in disdain. Yun Yang scratched his head. "This fellow can't be 6th level already, can it?" Yun Yang could not understand the little critter's shocking improvement. How much had he improved? Besides, why did its size not change at all after it had increased its level? It was still so small and dainty. This did not make sense. After a while, Whitey 2, Whitey 3, and Whitey 4 woke up as well. Each of them had experienced a similar process as Big Whitey. But after a while, the 3 little white fur balls were rolling around on the ground happily. Moreover, it was obvious that the mental state of these Eclipse Panthers, as well as the aura they occasionally exuded, were completely different from before. They were worlds apart. It was obvious that these little critters had benefited tremendously. However, Yun Yang could not tell how great the benefits were with his own eyes. The only thing he could be sure of was that their bodies had not grown bigger. This was not bad. Only the Lightning Cat, Whitey 5, was still lying there motionlessly. Although Whitey 5 had been hanging out with Whitey 2, Whitey 3, and Whitey 4, it was still a Lightning Cat. Its origins had determined that its behavior was different from the other Whiteys. Yun Yang could see with his naked eye that new fur was growing on the Lightning Cat's body continuously. It fell off quickly, and then grew again. The 3 Eclipse Panthers watched the Lightning Cat happily, but did not disturb it. Perhaps, they knew better than Yun Yang the Lightning Cat's current condition. Finally, after the 8th shedding, the Lightning Cat finally stood up. Its white fur was soft and silky, but its body was now 5 to 6 times bigger than before. From the looks of it, this white cat weighed at least 10 catties. Perhaps it should be called a big cat. However, it still looked cute and adorable. Meow. The Lightning Cat meowed lazily. Yun Yang finally heard the difference. The Eclipse Panther meowed lazily. The Lightning Cat meowed. But the difference was that there was a soft trill at the end. However, this Lightning Cat's current size was more than 4 to 5 times bigger than the Eclipse Panthers. Now, with the 3 Eclipse Panthers and the Lightning Cat together, it was more like a big cat bringing along 3 newly born kittens. Yin Yang's eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. The cat had grown bigger, but the panther was still so small. Yun Yang felt that he could go out and brag to someone and make a bet. Do you believe that my cat is 4 to 5 times bigger than a panther? You don't? Let's make a bet. Chapter 105. Excited, Yun Yang checked carefully and realized that the lightning cat, Whitey 5, had broken through the lightning cat clan's level shackles, becoming the first lightning cat in Tianxian continent's history to break through to the 4th level. It was 4th level pinnacle. It was only a step away from breaking through to the 5th level. Yun Yang's eyes almost popped out of his head at the sight of the Eclipse Panther's advancement. Eclipse Panthers, 9th level beginner mystical beasts. This was clearly recorded in the illustrated history of the strange beasts of the mountains and seas. There was no mistake about it. However, if the 3 beasts in his house continued to grow at a normal rate, they would at least reach the level of a 9th level Xian beast. Not to mention, the Eclipse Panther's ability had already soared to the 5th level intermediate standard. This furry little ball-like creature already possessed a terrifying lethality. Yun Yang could not help but feel more confident at this current situation. A fox borrowing the tiger's might? A man borrowing the beast's might? The surprises did not stop there. They came one after another. In the yard, Feng Mafei and Lao Mei's faces were filled with excitement. How about you? Feng Mafei asked. How about you? Lao Mei was so excited that he was gloating. I'm at the 7th peak pinnacle now. I can step into the 8th peak anytime. Feng Mafei was so excited that his tongue was trembling. I'm finally at the 7th peak. Lao Mei was beyond excited. I feel like I'm dreaming these days. If this goes on, I can challenge Dugacho next year. Tisk. Feng Mafei gave him the middle finger. Challenge Dugacho. Don't you think you're thinking too much, brother? When Yun Yang walked out, both of them went up to him. Young master, I have good news. Ah, young master, you've broken through too? Yun Yang rolled his eyes. This is really a blessed land of feng shui. Feng Mafei felt that the Yin residence's feng shui was too good. I'm hungry. Yin Yang's stomach rumbled. It's already done. Lao Mei winked proudly as the 3 men, 3 panthers, and a cat walked towards the dining hall. The mystical beast meat was still piled up like a mountain. However, Yun Yang, the glutton, felt nauseous at the sight of the mountain of fat. He felt full even before he had eaten. He sighed and sat down to eat. Lao Mei and Feng Mafei had already started wolfing down the food. It couldn't be helped. Eating with the young master was the best way to get food. If he didn't snatch it, he would really starve. But this time, the 2 of them each ate a kilogram of meat before they realized. This time, Yun Yang had only eaten a bowl of porridge, less than half a caddy of mystical beast meat, and 2 slices of fruit. Then he wiped his hands and mouth and stopped eating. Is he not eating anymore? Lao Mei was so shocked that he dropped the piece of bone he was chewing on. Young master, you're full? I'm full. Yun Yang looked at Lao Mei strangely. He had not realized it, but his eyes widened abruptly. I'm full? Feng Mafei and Lao Mei lowered their heads simultaneously. I'm actually full. Yun Yang continued to be surprised. How much have I eaten? You're full. Both of them were exasperated. Yun Yang, who had checked his condition, went out to practice his martial arts. Only then did he return with a face full of joy. Ha ha ha. I'm full. Ha ha ha. I'm full. This young master is blessed by the heavens. I'm actually full today. If others had heard this, they might have thought that this fellow had been starving for many years. Who would have known that Yun Yang was actually bursting with contentment? Ever since he was injured, he had developed a problem of gluttony. After breaking through to the 2nd stage of the endless divine art, he had actually recovered so mysteriously. While confirming that his gluttonous habit had been cured, Yun Yang realized something else that surprised him. The fact that his endless divine art could attract mystical beasts could be concealed, as long as he did not purposely use his cultivation method to stir up trouble. This situation made Yun Yang heave a huge sigh of relief. It was finally over. Carrying such an uncontrollable superpower was really a source of trouble. There was another thing that surprised Yun Yang. Towering Wind Pavilion was closed. Everyone inside, along with Shui Wuyin, had disappeared without a trace. Shui Wuyin had said that he was leaving. Had he gone home? However, Yun Yang had a feeling that there was a reason for this. He seemed to feel the two pairs of eyes that were staring at him, filled with endless suspicion. Yun Yang had a feeling that Shui Wuyin would never disappear, nor would he leave. He had probably been waiting for his next move. It looked like he had to explain it clearly when they met again. Otherwise, this would be a huge misunderstanding. However, how was he going to explain it? Once he tried to explain, it would involve everything. Even Yun Yang felt a headache coming on. Tiantang City had been unusually quiet for more than 10 days. So quiet that Yun Yang was not used to it. No one from Cirrus House was looking for trouble. The Board of Justice was still in a terrible predicament, searching for clues but to no avail. The three noble families had finally stopped making a fuss in the Board of Justice. But it was a matter of opinion as to how angry they were. They had begun to wreak havoc in the residence of Crown Prince. Hand over Shui Yuan. Where could the Crown Prince go to hand over Shui Yuan? They were truly in a terrible predicament. Encountering these three fellows who were relentless, unreasonable, and unscrupulous, it was a huge headache. All in all, the capital seemed to have returned to its usual state. However, Yun Yang could feel the prelude of a storm. The undercurrents of the past had all disappeared in an instant. Yun Yang had secretly activated the Nine Heavens Dictum's men to pay attention to these movements but to no avail. This is not a good thing. Yun Yang's vigilance had risen to the highest point. There must be something wrong when something was out of the ordinary. It's probably because the act of Shui Yuan and Fu Guansan escaping from the prison was too obvious. The Four Seasons Tower must be investigating this as well. Although they can't be sure where Shui Yuan has gone to, they have a better understanding of Shui Yuan's background. So, they'll realize it one day. Besides, they won't give up on the matter here. Yun Yang thought to himself. As long as there are still people from the Nine Supremes alive, as long as there's a possibility that they're still alive, they'll never give up. Other than dealing with the Four Seasons Tower's reaction, Yun Yang had another matter to attend to. Taizheng had returned. The first thing this legendary marshal had done after defending the Fortress of Resilience and rebuilding it was to cause a great disaster. Taizheng had massacred the residents of East Defense's men until their blood flowed like a river. The reason was treason. The incident had stirred up an uproar. In the end, it was suppressed by the alliance of His Majesty the Emperor and a few highly respected elders. There was a reason why Taizheng would do so, or rather he dared to do so. As a famed general, his retreat had been ambushed during the battle, and he was completely defenseless. To Taizheng, this was no doubt a great humiliation. Even though the opponent was Han Sanha, Taizheng would not admit defeat. He was not that stupid. Therefore, after the battle, Taizheng's meticulous investigation finally found out that the incident was related to the residents of East Defense. Taizheng had his reasons, but he had no evidence, at least no concrete evidence. Actually, it was normal that he had no evidence. Since the other party had decided to do something that was no different from treason, there would not be any evidence left behind. Therefore, Taizheng had raised his butcher's knife after half a month of hesitation and helplessness. He might as well not argue with reason and be unreasonable for once. Even if I have my head chopped off, I won't let a traitor like this live. The residents of East Defense was massacred. Once the news spread, the censors and censors went wild with accusations. Even His Majesty the Emperor was troubled. Why did you kill so many officials of the imperial court? Because they betrayed the country. Do you have evidence? Is the evidence irrefutable? No. If you don't, then you're a traitor, acting recklessly, deceiving the emperor and ignoring the nation's law. You've committed a heinous crime. I have evidence. What evidence? When Han Sanha was fighting me, he could actually send his army to ambush my retreat, and the point of entry was precise. It's impossible if there wasn't a traitor. What kind of evidence is this? This is just your speculation. This is irrefutable evidence. You're being unreasonable. This is the evidence. Indeed, in the eyes of the military, this matter was irrefutable evidence. Irrefutable evidence. In terms of war, it was still understandable if the infantry had ambushed their retreat. After all, The infantry had many ways to break up and sneak in before quickly regrouping. They could even disguise themselves. Now, however, their retreat had been ambushed by 30,000 cavalrymen. That was an absurd claim. Even a deputy general would not commit such an idiotic mistake, let alone a famous general like Taizheng. There must be a reason for it to happen. If they found out that this matter was related to the residents of East Defense, then it was definitely related. In other words, the massacre this time was definitely not a mistake. Even old Marshal Qiu Jianhan and Leng Douyin dared to use their heads as a guarantee. However, in the eyes of the government, the military was obviously finding excuses for their own failure. Without evidence, how dare you kill so brazenly? Just based on your empty words and white teeth to make a guarantee. That's enough? Do you think it's over? Then we'll call you traitors. What then? Because of this, the entire imperial court of Yutong was in an uproar. Both the military and the government had almost rolled up their sleeves to fight in court. After a bout of bickering, the matter finally came to an end. The military, of course, wanted to protect Taizheng. His Majesty the Emperor did not intend to do anything to Taizheng. After all, he had just made a great contribution. Most importantly, the military did not think that Taizheng's actions were wrong. The government was extremely disgusted by this and retorted. That was why there were so many bickering. His Majesty the Emperor, who was caught in the middle, had fined Taizheng 2 years of his salary to end the matter. Indeed, Taizheng was punished. This was something the government was happy to see. At least he was not completely unpunished. Taizheng was not convicted, he was only fined. It was as if he was innocent. This was the military's understanding. Now this menace was finally coming back. He was coming back to get married. On my wedding day, all my brothers, dead or alive, shall have a goblet of wedding wine. These were Taizheng's exact words. On the day the war ended, Taizheng had made his vow. I don't have the money. I can't have a pot for everyone but a goblet for everyone. I'll do it even if I have to go bankrupt. Even if I have to repay my debt for the rest of my life for this wedding wine. This goblet of wine must be toasted. Taizheng's words echoed throughout the entire empire of Yutong. Forget about the armies from the south, and north. Just Taizheng's eastern army alone had a head count of 500,000. If the brothers who had died in battle, the remaining troops who had participated in the war, the logistical support, the transportation of supplies. Chapter 106. What kind of number was 3 million cups of wine? What kind of concept was 3 million cups of wine? Let's put it this way. As a marshal, the wedding wine for Taizheng's wedding banquet could not be the kind that cost a dozen copper coins a caddy. It had to be at least 10 silver taels a caddy. It had to be even more expensive. Even if it was the cheapest kind of wine that cost 10 taels per caddy, it would cost at least 1 million caddies of wine to make 3 cups of wine per caddy. In other words, disregarding all other expenses, just the wine alone would cost at least 10 million taels of silver. Based on Taizheng's salary alone, he could never repay this amount even if he had 10 lifetimes. However, he had still made this promise, and was going to fulfill it on time. Taizheng was sprinting all the way. He could feel that his state of mind had undergone a huge change compared to when he had set off for the war. Now, Taizheng felt that everyone from the Empire of Yutong was so adorable and amiable. Along the way, he had met countless people who had come to offer him money, mere gold and silver to buy the marshal's wedding wine. Marshal, please do me the honor and accept it. However, Taizheng did not accept any of them, rejecting all of them. He knew that his promise was impulsive, extremely foolish even. All his brothers in the world were probably worried about him now. However, he would rather die of poverty and be shackled by debts that he could never repay in his lifetime than to accept these brothers' money. It's my business to treat all of you to wine at my wedding. Would I still be Taizheng if I were to spend your money to treat my guests? When I go back, I'll sell the 2 manors that His Majesty has bestowed me. They can be sold for about 3 million taels. If I sell all the soft gems and treasures at home, and the rewards that I've received all these years, they can be sold for another 2 million taels. There's also the savings that I've accumulated over the years. Some of the private goods that I've looted during the war that I haven't turned in yet. There's about 3 to 400,000 taels. If I sell the fief of my title, it can be sold for 2,700,000 taels. Then I'll have 8 million taels. Taizheng calculated in his heart. What's left is probably only a gap of 3 million taels. I'll borrow from Old Marshal and Marshal Qiu, and the generals from the Board of War will gather some. That should be enough. No matter what, I must let my brothers drink this wedding wine. Be it those who are still alive, or those who have died in battle. This is the wine that I Taizheng owe everyone. It's also the wine that my brothers deserve to drink. His Majesty wants to pay for it, but we can't. The national treasury is already empty. I still have some money, but I still have to pay the pensions of my brothers. I can't use this money to drink. I, Taizheng, can still afford to treat you to this wine. The 36 guards by his side were also discussing in secret. How much can you gather? Less than 10,000. I will think of a way to get to 10,000. I will definitely get to 10,000. My family is rich. I can take out 100,000. If I clench my teeth and squeeze, I can take out 120,000. I'm sure that's the amount. I'm ashamed. All these years, I've thrown everything away. I only have 100 silver taels on me now. I'll think of a way to borrow some money from someone. Is it possible for me to gather 5,000 silver taels? Damn you, Wu Lauer. You actually don't save up money at such a crucial time. I'm even poorer than second brother Wu here. Out of the 36 guards, 27 of them were paupers. They were truly powerless even though they had the heart. For a moment, the brothers looked at each other. The captain scolded them exasperatedly. You bunch of bastards. You're all King rich all the time. Why are all of you so cowardly when it comes to serious matters? 27 of them hung their heads low, their faces full of misery. It was true that a single copper coin could bring down a hero. The saying did not lie. It's mainly because we're at war every day. There are 27 of us. We don't have wives or children. Both our parents are dead. There's no one at home. What do we need money for? We can't wait to spend it all in the afternoon, if we have the money this morning. What if we die one day and we don't have the money to spend? How pitiful would that be? I didn't spend it indiscriminately, but once I got the money, I quickly gave it to the families of my fallen brothers. Who would have thought that this would happen? The brothers looked at each other and heaved a long sigh. No matter what, the marshal is getting married. The wedding banquet must be done beautifully. Ostentatious. The captain's eyes were red. Why don't all of you rob the rich to give to the poor? They were really desperate now, to the point of robbing the rich to give to the poor. No one is allowed to go. Taizheng's voice was forced to be cold. All of you have fought so hard to keep your lives on the battlefield. Yet you can't wait to throw your lives away? No one needs to say anything. Your father has money. A wedding banquet won't make your father poor. Keep your money. Those who don't have a wife, find a wife quickly, keep your roots. Taizheng's expression was dark. Why are you spending it on your father? Even if your father is in debt, I'm still a man with a wife. You bunch of single dogs, don't get involved. How could the 36 personal guards not know their own great general's family background? They all lowered their heads and were dispirited and dispirited. What are you guys pretending to be? Tiantang City is right in front of us. Taizheng warned in a low voice. We're the meritorious officials, we're the heroes. All of you, show me your vigor. Look at all of you looking so unlucky. The 36 men answered and rubbed their faces with their hands, rubbing them until they glowed and looked refreshed. He then tidied up his clothes, and even brushed his warhorse. Only then did he gallop forward valiantly and energetically. They had just passed by a forest. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew. A gust of wind blew, and countless leaves rustled, forming a long dragon in front of the cavalry. Stop. Taizheng reined in his horse. The 36 men behind him stopped at the same time. A voice came from the forest. Marshal Tai, since you're here, why don't we have a chat in the forest? The voice was gentle and elegant. Taizheng said, Who are you? Since you wish to meet me, why do you have to hide like this? The voice replied, Don't worry, we're friends. Friends? Taizheng sneered. Why don't I remember having such a shameful friend like you? As he spoke, His hand was already gripping the hilt of his sword. Behind him, the 36 cavalrymen had their sabers in their hands, their arrows nocked. The person in the forest was silent for a moment before he said, "It's fine if you don't come in." Suddenly, a bundle fell to the ground with a thud. The gentle voice said, "Marshal Tai, this is my family's Supreme Lord's wedding gift to Marshal Tai." Before the words could echo in the air, the silhouette on the other side had already disappeared without a trace. Wedding gift. Tai Zheng looked at the red bundle on the road, his gaze suspicious. He urged his horse over and carefully flipped through the bundle with his 25-feet-long spear. In the next moment, Tai Zheng's face was flushed, his entire body trembling with excitement as he sprung up and called out loudly, "Your Honor! Stay! Brother! Brother, stay!" However, no one in the forest answered him. Tai Zheng leaped into the forest with a swoosh, not caring if there was an ambush in the forest at this moment. He made a few rounds in the forest, and only saw a rock in the middle that was clean, as if someone had just sat on it. Tai Zheng walked over in agitation, only to see a piece of paper pressed on the rock with a sentence written on it. "Congratulations to Brother Tai for your wedding. May you live in bliss for 100 years, and have a son soon. The wedding wine is on me." It was a short sentence. However, there was a signature of a ball of flame. 9 stars surround and guard, the flame burns. At this moment, Tai Zheng was shaking from head to toe. The regret he felt was indescribable and overwhelming. Why didn't he come in just now? Why was he so paranoid? "Marshal!" The captain of the Janissaries rushed in hastily. "Marshal! There are 12 million silver taels in this bundle." He was agitated, excited, and sighing. His own family knew him best. With the marshal's temper, he would never accept such a large sum of money that had fallen out of nowhere. "Accept it." Tai Zheng exhaled in exasperation. "Yes, I will send it back now." "Ha!" The captain's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "Accept it." F***CK. Did the marshal say it wrongly or did I hear it wrongly? We brothers have sincerely contributed money to the marshal, but were rejected by the marshal. Why did he accept it now? What happened to family? What happened to brothers? Was the little boat of brothers going to capsize? "This is the wedding gift from the 9 lords. He said that he will pay for the wedding wine." Tai Zheng smiled bitterly. "I can reject the world, reject His Majesty, but the 9 lords' money, I can't. His words made the captain of the Janissaries tremble in agitation. Nine lords. Chapter 107. Tai Zheng's wedding was being prepared in full swing. This wedding had become the biggest event of the nation's military. No one had expected that a general's wedding would become a wedding without precedent in the Empire of Yutong, because of a seemingly absurd and idiotic promise. No wedding could be grander than this one. There was no other wedding that was more burdened than Tai Zheng's wedding. The 20th of October. Tai Zheng's wedding. There were still 2.5 months from now, but this impending wedding had shaken the entire continent. All the brothers who were alive, and those who had died in the war were celebrating and drinking together. The entire Empire of Yutong's military felt their backs straighter as they walked on the streets. Not only the Empire of Yutong. This news made all the soldiers in the eastern continent feel their blood boiling. Dayuan, Tianxi, and the other empires' board of war and generals had sent letters of request. Can the enemies of the battlefield have a drink? Even the empire of Dongshuan's board of war, which had just fought a war, had Han San's handwritten letter sent from miles away. Congratulations to the soldiers. Can the general's wedding have a drink? The Empire of Yutong's imperial court was in a heated debate regarding this matter. The civil officials' understanding was that Tai Zheng was playing to the gallery, creating trouble out of nothing to buy people's hearts. Look, even the enemy's generals wanted to have a drink. What was this all about? Many of the more observant people were even more certain that the drinking was an excuse, and that the real motive was to spy on the military. Since there were such concerns, this absurd farce should be stopped. At the very least, people from other countries should be prevented from participating. Unexpectedly, the Empire of Yutong's emperor, Yu Peiza, was exceptionally tough this time, going against the majority's wishes and issuing a letter of credence of peace. 7 heroes of 5 empires. No war before the new year. Gentlemen's agreement, there is wine and peace. Can we sign it? The emperors of the empires responded immediately to the letter of credence. No war before the new year. The letter of credence of peace was announced to the world. The people of the entire eastern continent knew about it. All the famed generals of the entire eastern continent would gather in Tiantang City to attend Tai Zheng's wedding and drink a cup of brotherhood wine together. However, time was running out. After all, there were only 2.5 months left. Tiantang City was bustling with activity. Some of the generals who had a long journey had already started to depart from their respective countries. Not for anything else, but for his brothers on the battlefield. Regardless of friend or foe, they were all heroic souls. It was the common wish of all soldiers to invite their fallen brothers to their wedding. However, this wish was an extravagant hope. At least in his own country, this wish could not be fulfilled. There was no need to talk about ordinary generals. And it was even more impossible to mess with high-ranking generals. Even if he wanted to do it, the sovereign would be suspicious. You invited so many people to your wedding. What are you trying to do by doing such a thing? Win the hearts of the people? His achievements were already enough to shock the Lord. If he were to do something like this, his head would truly roll on the ground. It would be a lifelong regret if he couldn't do it himself. However, since someone else was doing it, this rare opportunity finally presented itself. Then, no matter how far away he was, even if it was an enemy country, he would do it. I want to go too. Many generals felt their blood boiling. I'm going to ask for a cup of wine for my fallen brothers. Even if it was the enemy's wedding wine, this cup of wine belonged to the soldiers of the world. Even if I die in Yutong because of this, it's worth it to be able to drink this wine. No one would have thought that what seemed like a farce in the eyes of the literati, a mere soldier's wedding, would actually become a grand event attended by the entire continent's military. It was unprecedentedly grand, a grand event of the military. No, not only was this grand and unprecedented, it would be difficult for anyone to compare to it in the future. Yin Yang sat quietly under the flower canopy, paying attention to the information coming from all directions. He was not confident in the enemy's inexplicable hibernation. They had actually retreated after missing their target. This was not in line with the Four Seasons Tower style. However, Yin Yang also believed that if the enemy were to strike again, it would be a thunderous blow. The enemy could already confirm that there were still people alive in the Nine Supremes. As long as there were still people alive in the Nine Supremes, the enemy would never give up. In the future, they would only employ a more rigorous and terrifying plan to target them. The forces of the four noble families of North, South, East, and West had left Tiantang City quietly. In spite of this, the four noble young masters of Spring, Summer, Autumn, and Winter insisted on staying in Tiantang City. Other than finding trouble with the Crown Prince's residence, they often gathered at Cirrus' house. Qiu Yunsan had also been released from his house arrest and joined in. He was brutally beaten by Dong Tianling, who pointed at his nose and warned, "I'll skin you alive if you dare to hit on my sister again." Qiu Yunsan was as docile as a child. "Of course, I wouldn't dare even if you begged me to hit on her. I'm still limping now." Oh, that beating! Qiu Yunsan shuddered at the thought of it, fear creeping onto his face. "Have you seen a rainstorm before?" The other 3 popinjays laughed, taking pleasure in his misfortune. "Oh right, Dong Tianling, where's the fellow who was with you that day?" Chen Wanfeng fanned himself with a green fan. If it were not for the green bamboo branch on his head, he would have looked rather elegant. "Why haven't I seen him for a few days?" "What fellow?" Dong Tianling said unhappily. "That's my boss." "Your boss?" The 3 popinjays exclaimed at the same time. Dong Tianling was instantly alerted, realizing that he had let the cat out of the bag. He quickly corrected himself. "Yes, my boss doesn't know him." Yes, that's right. We understand you." The 3 popinjays nodded solemnly. On the other side, Yin Zuyu was smiling. With Yin Zuyu's knowledge, how could she not see that these fellows were the amulets that Yin Yang had found for her? With these fellows here, it was basically equivalent to the 4 noble families holding the fort here. Who would dare to provoke such a force? Yun Yang had put in a lot of effort for her sake. Therefore, Yun Zuyu blended in with these four fellows without hesitation, calling them brothers. She would drink and have fun for free. This action made Dong Tianling and the rest feel flattered. While they felt honored, they were also ashamed, feeling that they owed this new sister too much. Now hearing Dong Tianling and the rest talk about Yin Yang, Yun Zuyu's eyes darted around and said, "Young Master Chun is right. Young Master Yin hasn't come for many days. However, this is normal. He rarely comes in the past. After all, he's the young master of Marquis Yun's family. He must be very busy." The young master of Marquis Yun's family, Xiao Yunsan Xia Bingchuan, and Chun Wanfeng's eyes shone. Dong Tianling looked bitter. He did not expect Yun Zuyu to reveal Yun Yang's identity just like that. He could no longer hide it. There was a 99% chance that he would not be able to enjoy the benefits alone. What should he do? Dong Tianling's eyes darted around as he thought of a countermeasure. Chun, Xia, and Xiao's eyes darted around as well, thinking that the mysterious person who had secretly helped Dong Tianling must be this young master Yun Yang. Then, what method should I use to rope in such a strong helper? Yun Zuyu's red lips took a sip of wine, a gentle smile on her face. Little brother, you can benefit from both sides of the four of them. I'll make sure you take advantage of them. All right. I'll invite our boss over. Let's drink together. Dong Tianling said. Wait here. The three of them were reluctant. What are you talking about? Your boss is still our boss. How can you go alone? Not only are you not giving boss face, you're also not giving us face. Yes, we're all brothers. Your boss is my boss? What do you mean, Dong Tianling? Are you trying to raise your own status? That's right. Dong Tianling is obviously trying to drive a wedge between our relationship with our boss. If he goes alone, he might say something bad about us in front of our boss. That must be it. You guys. Dong Tianling glared at the three shameless people. I've never seen such shameless people. What do you mean by your boss? Have you guys seen him before? We haven't even spoken a word, and you're already calling him so affectionately. I'd like to ask you, have you guys ever been so respectful to the bosses of your respective families? I must get to know such a boss. As long as I see him, I, Chun Wanfeng, will bow before him. From today onwards, I, Qiu Yunsan, will follow boss lead. My boss is wise and mighty. A genius gifted by the heavens, he's omnipotent. I, Xia Bingchuan, am willing to follow him forever. Hey! Dong Tianling shouted with his eyes wide open. I say, don't be so familiar with each other. That's my boss. Only my boss. You guys haven't even seen him before. What kind of relationship are you talking about? Who was the one who said it yesterday? Ask me, Dong Tianling. Why hasn't the idiot who was with you the other day come these days? Has he become a boss today? Xia Bingchuan was embarrassed. That was Chun Wanfeng, he said it. I didn't say it. You were the one who said it. Why drag me into it? Chun Wanfeng retorted quickly. Xia Bingchuan was furious. Chun Wanfeng, you were the one who said that the handsome boy with Dong Tianling is a gigolo who lives off a woman, didn't you? T. Qiu Yunsan even said that the boy with Dong Tianling looks like he has a weak kidney. He might not be able to get hard. What does your fight have to do with me? Qiu Yunsan was enraged. Don't drive a wedge between me and boss. The three of them were flushed with anger as they exposed each other. Dong Tianling sneered as he watched the three of them fight amongst themselves. Who's scolding me? Following the angry voice, a silhouette appeared at the door looking displeased. I, Yun, have only had a meal with Dong Tianling. How can my reputation be so bad? The four of them turned around in shock, only to see a person at the door. He was tall and handsome, his hair fluttering in the wind, looking as if he would leave with the wind at any time. He was dressed in a purple robe, elegant and graceful. Chapter 108. Boss! Dong Tianling sprung up. The three of them are scolding you. All three of them aren't good people. You have to be careful when you interact with them, boss. Don't be fooled by these despicable people, they. Dong Tianling. You bastard. Boss. I wasn't talking about you just now. I'm Chun Wanfeng. Do you know me, boss? It's okay if you don't. We'll get to know each other after today. You'll be my boss for life from now on. Chen Wanfeng's face was full of flattery as he leaned forward like a lapdog, his flattery endless like a torrential river. Boss. My dear boss. Xia Bingchuan was overwhelmed with emotion, tears welling up in his eyes as if he was about to cry. I've finally found you. From today onwards, I, Xia Bingchuan, will be at your beck and call, even if I have to die 1,000 times. Boss. Qiu Yunsan's leg was still limping as he rushed forward. Boss. I've finally seen you. Sob, boss. It's a pity that my leg was almost broken just to see you. It's still not healed yet. From now on, boss, I'll never go west if you ask me to. I'll never scold a chicken if you ask me to beat a dog. The scene of the three of them rushing forward together was a stunning one. At least, Yin Yang felt that he was shocked. What was going on? He had clearly heard these people talking about the person who was with Dong Tianling the other day. Why did the scene change in the blink of an eye? However, Yin Yang's attention was then drawn to another matter. You're Qiu Yunsan? Yin Yang scanned Qiu Yunsan from head to toe, his gaze unfriendly. If it were not for this child's trouble, would he be so passive now? I'm Qiu Yunsan. Qiu Yunsan was baffled. Why does boss look like he doesn't welcome me? Boss, you can call me Little Qiu or Little Sanshan. Anything works. Your tone scares me. I've just been beaten up. Qiu Yunsan rolled up his trouser leg, acting pitiful as he pointed. Boss, look, my leg is still swollen. Serves you right. Yin Yang snorted. Who asked you to be so blind? This is only the first time. What if you say you want to take Yun Zuiyu as a concubine again tonight? Qiu Yunsan wailed. Boss, I don't dare to do it anymore. It's all Manager Mi's fault. It's none of my business. How is it none of your business? If you weren't stupid, there wouldn't be such a mess. Yin Yang had already sat down. You jumped right into the pit that someone dug. It's fortunate that it's your uncle. Otherwise you Qiu Yunsan would be dead this time. Qiu Yunsan's expression turned ferocious. That's right. My uncle told me about this as well. Mother ***. This me guy is too much. This matter is definitely not over. So, Yin Yang saw that he was almost done with his provocation, so he decided to add one last flame. Let's not talk about whether or not I'm worthy to be your boss. However, I don't want to have a little brother like you who was almost played to death. Yin Yang smiled. Who knows when I'll be dragged down by you? It's better not to have a follower like this. Yin Yang's gaze swept across Dong Tianling. Dong Tianling was filled with righteous indignation. That's right. Look at the mess you've caused. Not only have you been used, you've actually dragged the three of us into this as well. We've been sent to the Board of Justice's prison to spend the night. What an undeserved calamity. If it weren't for you, would our brothers have fought so hard? We've been dragged down by you enough. Don't drag our boss down anymore. Chen Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan were not good at other things, but when it came to adding insult to injury, they were absolutely top-notch. You're right. I've never heard Dong Tianling say something so reasonable. That's right. Old Qiu, really, you've been like a jinx recently. Look at how you've caused Sister Yu. Look at how you've caused us. Look at how you've caused my face to grow pockmarks. Maybe we lost to Dong Tianling some time ago because of him. When have we ever lost before? As they spoke, the three of them suddenly stopped. Chen Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan smacked their lips at the same time. This F***king makes a F***king lot of sense. Qiu Yunsan was extremely miserable when he heard them and said angrily, just you wait and see. If I don't mess with that fellow within 3 months, Dong Tianling said lightly. Oh, a self-imposed time limit of 3 months? What a short time. It'll pass in the blink of an eye. All right, I'll make an oath as well. If I'm not invincible in the world within 3,000 years, I'll die. I swear to the heavens. Ha ha ha. Xia Bingchuan and Chen Wanfeng guffawed. If I don't die within 3,000 years, I'll hang myself. If I can't pee on the sun once in 30,000 years, I'll kill myself. Ha ha ha. Qiu Yunsan was trembling all over, his face green with anger. Just you wait and see. 3 days. If I don't make this bastard pay within these 3 days, my surname isn't Qiu. Yin Yang quickly tried to smooth things over. Everyone was just joking. Why are you so serious? Come, let's drink. Seeing that their boss had stepped in to smooth things over, the group beamed with joy and began toasting him continuously. Yin Yang emptied his goblet, instantly becoming intimate with each other, calling each other brothers. Only Chiu Yunsan was still livid, unable to find a way out of the situation. He was being ridiculed too harshly. Even when he occasionally forced a smile and drank a goblet of wine with Yin Yang, he would start sulking again when he turned around. After a long while in the heat of the wine, Pa! Chiu Yunsan threw the goblet onto the ground abruptly, shattering it into pieces. With bloodshot eyes he said, "How dare he scheme against me? I must kill that bastard." This sudden sentence caused everyone to jump in fright. They then watched as Chiu Yunsan stood up abruptly and charged out in a rage. Yin Yang frowned and shot a look at Dong Tianling. "Go talk to him quickly." Dong Tianling chased after him unwillingly. The group stopped drinking as well, but Dong Tianling's persuasive voice could be heard coming from afar. "I say, why are you so boring? Everyone's drinking and we're having a good time. What are you doing? Are you angry that you've been schemed against? It's not the first time you've been schemed against. You have to get used to it. Look at your unlucky face. Maybe you'll be schemed against by that me again." Yin Yang was dumbfounded and asked, "Is this persuasion?" Chen Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan laughed hysterically, holding their stomachs, as if everything was as they had expected. As expected, Dong Tianling walked in with his chest puffed out and said helplessly, "Boss, I've tried so hard to persuade him just now. Every word of mine is a gem. I've given my all to him, but he won't listen. I'm really at my wit's end. Trying so hard, giving his all to him. King know how to use idioms." Yin Yang was exasperated as he reminded them, "Don't let him cause any trouble. Tiantang City isn't peaceful now. The military forces of various countries are about to arrive. It's a turbulent time. It can't be compared to normal times. If something happens to Chiu Yunsan here, you know the consequences. I'll be fine, but the three of you won't be able to get away with it. Do you understand? It's always better to be cautious." Dong Tianling and the other two were moved to tears. "Well, remember boss reminder. Don't worry, Chiu Yunsan has a temper. He'll go down on his own after a while. It won't be a big deal. Don't provoke him when you meet him again." Yin Yang reminded them, "Let's not overdo things when we're friends. I've realized that all of you have quite a sharp tongue." The three of them guffawed. "That's because boss hasn't seen Chiu Yunsan's true face. If this happened to us, this bastard's tongue would be even sharper. We've already given him a lot of face because boss is here today. That's right, that's right. If we really do something, we can make him hang himself today." Yun Zuiyu sat on the side, watching Yin Yang casually stir up the matter and remove himself from it. From the beginning to the end, there was not a single trace that could be found. She could not help but admire him. This young brother's methods were truly unpredictable. The other party had incited Chiu Yunsan to cause trouble, and he had incited Chiu Yunsan to retaliate. His methods were equally clean. No matter who he was facing, he could set his position straight at once. What he should say, what tone of voice, what attitude. He had grasped it perfectly. What a talent! Yun Zuyu thought to herself. This was definitely an extraordinary character, who could quickly stand firm and stir up trouble, or even control the situation at any time, any place, and any environment. Was there such a powerful character among the 9 supreme subordinates? If there was, why had Flame never told me about it? I've been studying something during this period of time, Yin Yang said. What is it? Dong Tianling and the other two asked at the same time. Dong Tianling had long been loyal to Yin Yang, but Chen Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan felt that Yin Yang was a good person after this encounter. Someone worth befriending. Frank, passionate, easy to make friends, forthright, loyal and considerate of others. His demeanor was impeccable, and his elegance was even more graceful. He even had a bit of the rascality that rich young masters liked the most. Yes, he was a person who could mess around with his own people, but was completely unreasonable towards outsiders. Just like me. Therefore, in a very short period of time, these two rich playboys went from wanting to make friends with each other. This was an extremely significant change in their mental journey. This is, Yun Yang continued, Is it possible for mystical beasts to break through another layer of their predetermined foundation, or rather their inherent shackles, to reach a higher level? Yin Yang's words were abrupt, but the three popinjays' eyes widened at the same time. Chapter 109. What did you say? Dong Tianling and the other two stuttered. I don't know if the noble families have other secret methods, but personally, I think there's such a possibility. Yin Yang said, Do you still remember that double-headed lion of yours? How was it? It worked after my training, didn't it? Yes, it worked. Dong Tianling was rather guilty as he looked at Chen Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan awkwardly. Chen and Xia snorted angrily at the same time, before looking at Yin Yang fervently. Actually, the method of training the double-headed lion was only limited to raising its spirituality and breaking through its original habits and habitual actions. Although its ability has increased, it hasn't touched upon the limit of the mystical beast's innate talent. I'm still in the process of figuring out how to break through the limit. Actually, even if I were to succeed, I might not be able to improve much. Yin Yang knew very well that a moment of congeniality was not a long-term solution when he was with these young masters of noble families. These four people did not seem to have any ulterior motives, but Yin Yang knew very well that as long as they were sent by the four noble families and could roam the martial world on their own, how could they be fools? These fellows might look gullible, but if he really thought so, he would be the biggest fool. If he was useful and they wanted to befriend him, they would have all sorts of tricks up their sleeves. However, if he was useless, then they would have all sorts of tricks up their sleeves as well. It was not impossible for them to betray him when it came to benefits. On the other hand, as long as he could provide them with a certain amount of benefits, it would not be difficult for him to keep his position as the boss, and even subdue them completely. However, this benefit had to be something they could not refuse, and something they could not do themselves. Dong Tianling asked impatiently, How much can it improve? Chen Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan's eyes were burning as well. Even their breaths were held. I dare not say for sure now. Probably. Yin Yang said, I can only raise it from beginner level to pinnacle. It's still impossible to skip levels. For example, raising a beginner's 7th level mystical beast to 7th level pinnacle. Yin Yang nodded deep in thought. Dong Tianling was trembling with excitement. What if it's a beginner 9th level mystical beast? Yin Yang replied, It's the same principle. Elevating to the pinnacle of the 9th level. What about it? He lifted his head and looked at Dong Tianling in surprise. Don't tell me you don't even know how to deduce such an analogy? He's an idiot. Chen Wanfeng was so agitated that his teeth were chattering. He moved closer and asked, Boss, are you sure you can really raise a beginner 9th level mystical beast to the peak of 9th level? Yin Yang was taken aback when he heard the question. He thought about it for a moment and said, Your question is on point. There really isn't such an absolute certainty right now. However, I'm currently thinking of perfecting my research step by step. So far, I've succeeded a little bit. The trio's eyes shone even brighter. However, to cultivate mystical beasts and break through their own shackles, we must start from the cub and conduct targeted training in all aspects. Yin Yang said seriously, Otherwise the hope is slim. Of course. Of course. The three of them nodded at the same time like chickens pecking at rice. Everyone's hearts were already filled with hope. What was the difference between a 9th level beginner stage mystical beast and a 9th level peak mystical beast? According to the most conservative theory, a 9th level peak mystical beast could easily kill 10 9th level beginner stage mystical beasts. Furthermore, the 9th level peak mystical beast might not even be injured after this battle. It would only be slightly tired at most. This was the difference between the two. It was like heaven and earth a world apart. Thinking back to the rise of the Shiman family among the four noble families of the East, South, West, and North, it was because their old ancestor possessed a 9th level pinnacle mystical beast that allowed them to charge forward step by step. Although the Shiman family had always proclaimed that it was a 9th level peak mystical beast, who among the 8 noble families did not know the truth? If they could have a 9th level peak mystical beast, for a moment, The three of them were like ants on a hot pan. They had to let the family know about this as soon as possible, so that they could get their hands on a 9th-level mystical beast's cub at all costs. If I had. Dong Tianling was the most impatient. A 9th-level beginner stage mystical beast. Boss, can you? His smile was filled with ingratiation. It was unprecedentedly bright. Yin Yang rolled his eyes and said, "Can you not jump to conclusions based on hearsay? It's true that my research has some achievements, but can you not treat me like a god? Do you think it's easy to cultivate mystical beasts? This includes a lot of conditions, including profound crystals, spirit jades, heavenly materials and earthly treasures, and a large amount of investment. Most importantly, I'm still in the groping stage. Do you think high-level profound beasts are so easy to get, that you can get them just because you want them? But then again, if you're able to gather all the conditions, we'll settle the accounts and discuss the conditions. It's not impossible to help you once." Yin Yang sighed. "We're all brothers. Do you call me boss for no reason? However, there's something I have to make clear. If you let others know about this, I'll never have a day of peace ever again. We'll never let anyone know." The three of them swore together, each of them overjoyed. Boss had said, "Do you call me boss for no reason?" He had said all of you, and not you. This meant that all of them had a share. Ha ha ha, this is great. Who would be so foolish as to spread the news? Wouldn't it be great to make a fortune in silence? I say, all of you should be more united in the future. Yun Yang took the opportunity to put on the airs of a boss and lectured. The four noble families are of the same breath and branch. Qiu Yunsan has been set up, but all of you are gloating over his misfortune. This isn't right. If so, will all of you be the same when I'm set up in the future? Boss, we're wrong. This is our fault. There won't be a next time. Dong Tianling, Chen Wanfeng, and Xia Bingchuan sincerely reflected at the same time. We'll be united and friendly. If anything happens to Boss, we won't hesitate to climb a mountain of swords, or dive into a sea of flames. Stop. Stop trying to get close to me. Yin Yang rolled his eyes and waved his hand. I know all of you are anxious. Quickly send the message to your families. Come back for a drink after you're done. Don't say that I, the boss, am heartless. Thank you, boss. Ha ha ha. The three of them sprung up. With a swoosh, they disappeared without a trace. Yin Yang turned to look at Yin Zuiyu. Yin Zuiyu's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Young brother, do you have something to tell me? Yin Zuiyu asked anxiously. It's nothing much. Sister-in-law, you don't have to be so careful. Yin Yang smiled easily. Yin Zuiyu felt like she had been struck by lightning. Sister-in-law. Yin Yang had been reluctant to call her sister-in-law before this, but now he had called her so naturally. Why? Tears welled up in Yin Zuiyu's eyes as she trembled in disbelief. Young brother. What did you call me? Sister-in-law. Yin Yang called her name clearly and enunciated each word clearly. Fifth brother said, no matter if he's alive or dead, you're always his wife. Yin Zuiyu took 2 rapid breaths. Her jade-like face suddenly flushed red as tears streamed down her cheeks in a stream. She covered her mouth and wiped her tears away with her other hand, but she could not wipe them clean no matter how hard she tried. This heartless man. Yin Zuiyu's voice was sobbing. He's finally enlightened. Yin Yang smiled. Still, I can only call you Sister Yu in front of others. I hope sister-in-law will be magnanimous enough to forgive me. Yin Yang smiled. Still, I can only call you Sister Yu in front of others. I hope sister-in-law is magnanimous enough to forgive me. Yin Zuiyu's face glowed as she said, this is how it should be. Besides, you're causing me trouble by calling me sister-in-law in front of others. It was obvious that she was trying to enlighten Yin Yang. Yin Zuiyu wished that everyone in the world would know that she was her sister-in-law. I, Yin Zuiyu, am also someone with a husband. Where is he now? Yin Zuiyu was laughing and crying at the same time as she asked softly while wiping her tears. He can't come back for now, Yin Yang said carefully. Maybe a very long time. I'll wait no matter how long it takes. Yin Zuiyu raised her hand to stop Yin Yang from continuing. She said seriously, as long as I have this sentence, it's enough. Even if I, Yin Zuiyu, have to wait for a lifetime, until I become a pile of dirt, I'll wait. Yun Yang looked at her in a daze and sighed softly in his heart. Yun Zuyu quickly collected herself and wiped away her tears. She actually raised a goblet of wine and said, "Brother, come, let us have a drink. Let us celebrate. That heartless fellow, has finally become a man today." Yun Yang did not know whether to laugh or cry. If his fifth brother Supreme Flame, who had always been hot-tempered, were to really hear this comment, what kind of reaction would he have? Yun Zuyu had already emptied her goblet. Her eyes were gleaming as she said flirtatiously, "Young brother, do you know? Today is the happiest, most comfortable, and most satisfying cup of wine I've ever had in so many years. From now on, this body has a burden. From now on, this love has a burden. From now on, this heart belongs to someone." Yun Zuyu chuckled, her eyes misty as she said, "From now on, I have no regrets in this life." Yun Yang could only feel a wave of suppressed air rushing up his chest, almost blocking his throat. He coughed and said, "I'm very happy to." He raised his goblet and emptied it in one gulp, only to feel that this goblet of wine was sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy. Dong Tianling and the other two came back very quickly and happily toasted each other, determined to drink until they were drunk. Yun Zuyu excused herself from staying up late and went back to rest. Her footsteps when she walked out were light and brisk. There was even the liveliness of a young girl. Yun Yang could even hear that Yun Zuyu could not help but let out a carefree chuckle when she walked out of the room. However, this carefree chuckle was like a sharp needle that pierced into Yun Yang's heart. What would happen in the future? Yun Yang was at a loss now. He felt that he was like a cobbler who was working in vain, trying desperately to mend the top of a net that had a hole in the bottom. It was like a lie that could not withstand any scrutiny. Yun Yang and the other three chatted as they drank. Other than Yun Yang, who seemed to be troubled and seemed to be fine on the surface, the other three looked rather nervous, as if they were waiting for something. Finally, there was a loud bang. A person rushed in. Chapter 110. What is it? Dong Tianling's expression tightened. Young Master Chiu, Young Master Chiu. The guard was out of breath. He has captured everyone in the Mi family's alley. He's parading them through the streets in the middle of the night, heading towards the inn. Dong Tianling and the other two men sucked in a breath of cold air, as if they had a toothache. The faces of the three of them twitched. Chiu Yunsan's eldest young Master Chiu's actions were swift indeed. He had actually carried out his revenge in such a short period of time. He had directly captured all of Keeper Mi's family members. However, this incident was about to become an earth-shattering event. That shopkeeper Mi was no ordinary merchant. He was a true blue minister of the imperial household. He was a high-ranking figure who could easily reach the ears of the emperor. You're just a young master of a martial world family. How could you openly capture the entire family? What kind of explanation is that? No matter how powerful the Chiu family was, transcending the laws of the world, it was still a little too much for you to do this in someone else's capital city. It was unjustifiable. Besides, this fellow had an uncle who was the head of the military generals, old Marshal Chiu. He would not be able to explain himself just because of his age. Yun Yang's hand that was holding his wine cup could not help but tremble. I'm still thinking about what you're going to do. I've come up with hundreds and thousands of ingenious plans. But I didn't expect you to use such a direct, unreasonable, simple, violent, and brainless method, big brother. Yun Yang was speechless for a moment. My original intention was only to borrow a knife. You don't have to be so dramatic. This kind of situation, to put it in a sentence that we can all understand, is, I just wanted to borrow a knife, but you threw me an atomic bomb. And it's already been ignited. We're in trouble. These three words came out of the four men's mouths at the same time. Let's go over quickly and see if there's any way to turn things around. Dong Tianling sprung up like his but was on fire. F***ck. We're really dragged down by this jinx this time. My God, please don't kill anyone. If we really do, we're all doomed. The four of them left in a hurry. Yun Yang looked calm on the surface, but his heart was in turmoil. Other than cursing in his heart, he didn't have any other thoughts regarding the behavior of these young masters from aristocratic families. Just as the four of them arrived at the Tower into Heaven Inn, before Chiu Yunsan could be called out, the third party had arrived. The one leading them was old Marshal Chiu. It was obvious that the old man was furious. One could not blame old Marshal Chiu for being angry. As far as the eye could see, the courtyard of the inn where Chiu Yunsan stayed was filled with more than 100 people. These people were the residents of the Mi family alley, all of Keeper Mi's family members. There were also many distant relatives who had been captured and brought here by young Master Chiu. Because they were arrested in the dark of the night, many of them were not even wearing clothes. They were only wrapped in a bedsheet, and their faces were filled with terror as they shivered and were at a loss of what to do. Since you dared to trick me, you'll have to pay the price. Chiu Yunsan's face was filled with murderous intent, the veins on his neck bulging. I don't care if you're the King Minister of Household Affairs or Minister of Household Affairs. How dare you plot against your father? If that thing with no bottom doesn't come and give your father an explanation before dawn, your father will bury all these people alive. Little bastard. Old Marshal Chiu was enraged as he roared. Release them immediately. Not releasing. Chiu Yunsan straightened his neck and was equally enraged. Old Marshal Chiu, you're the marshal of the Empire of Yutong, but today's matter is a personal grudge. There's no room for you to intervene. This child was not even calling him uncle anymore. Old Marshal Chiu was infuriated. His eyes darted left and right, looking for a stick. Uncle, are you going to lecture me again? You and I are both descendants of the Chiu family. It's understandable if you lecture your nephew because of this identity. Chiu Yunsan looked into the old marshal's eyes that were spitting fire. But uncle, your identity now is the marshal of the Empire of Yutong. One is for the country, the other is for the family. Have you forgotten, uncle? Other than plotting against me, the one with the surname Mi has also plotted against you. No matter how I put it, uncle, what you do is the Empire of Yutong's business. But how I seek justice is the Chiu family's business. These are two matters that cannot be confused. If I admit to this matter just like this, how can the Chiu family walk the martial world with dignity in the future? Are we going to admit it when we know that we've been set up and set up? In that case, what if we are set up by others again in the future? What will we do then? Will we be dealt with the same way? Old Marshal Chiu could not help being stunned when he heard the words, his rage extinguished. The cause of this matter is indeed me being a popinjay. I'm not sensible. I have a childish temper. I'm mischievous. It's my own weakness that caused others to set up this trap. Chiu Yunsan said boldly. I admit to all of the above. I'll ask for forgiveness when I return to the family. However, this is not a reason for the one with the surname Mi to set me up. Here, my surname is Chiu. Here, no matter how disappointing I am, I'm still a part of the Chiu family, and I represent the Chiu family. Setting a trap for me is the same as setting a trap for the Chiu family. The Chiu family will never swallow this humiliation for nothing. Old Marshal Chiu heaved a deep sigh. The rage within him had vanished without a trace. His gaze towards Chiu Yunsan was even a little comforted. This little bastard has finally grown some brains, knowing to pull me out of the picture. Looking at Chiu Yunsan, who was being reasonable, old Marshal Chiu had a thought in his heart. He's grown up. Yun Yang, Chen Wanfeng, Xia Bingchuan, and Dong Tianling were watching and listening from the side, exchanging looks of surprise. Since when did Chiu Yunsan become so reasonable? This was not like him. The matter has to be resolved. Old Marshal Chiu sighed. But no lives can be lost. Otherwise, he did not continue, only giving his nephew a discreet look. Chiu Yunsan said word by word. Whether lives are lost or not depends on how the one with the surname Mi does. If the one with the surname Mi doesn't give me an explanation, I'll slaughter his entire family. There's no room for discussion on this matter. The old marshal sighed and waved his hand. Move to the side, line up, move back. Then he strode to the side. Yun Yang instinctively wanted to hide himself, but Chiu Jianhan was already walking straight towards him. Child of the Yin family. Chiu Jianhan's gaze was deep, like an eagle that had caught a sparrow, pinned to Yun Yang's face. Yun Yang chuckled and came out to greet him. Old Sir Chiu as well. Chiu Jianhan's probing gaze landed on Yun Yang's face, a faint smile on his lips. You run pretty fast, child. Why do I realize that you're involved in everything? Yin Yang was bewildered. What? Qiu Jianhan snorted angrily. This old man is saying that you're running fast to watch the show. Even faster than this old man. Yin Yang chuckled apologetically. How would I dare? Who would dare to watch such a show? It's just that I happened to be present at the right time, and couldn't leave. I was drinking with young Master Dong, and the others when they came all the way here for the sake of brotherhood. I'm too embarrassed to go home alone. Qiu Jianhan's face remained impassive. They're loyal to brotherhood, what about you? Yin Yang patted his chest. Old sir, please understand. This nephew is only a popinjay, but I've always kept the word brotherhood in mind. Where there's righteousness, there's no turning back. For brothers and friends, brotherhood is the most important. This? Qiu Jianhan frowned, looking at this glib-tongued fellow, feeling like he was a loach that he could not catch. Are you free tomorrow? Old Marshal Qiu asked. Yin Yang felt that something was amiss, but he could not shirk the responsibility now. He could only bite the bullet and say, perhaps. I'm fine, but I'm not sure. Qiu Jianhan was exasperated. Whether you're free or not, wait at home tomorrow. This old man will go to your house to take a look. It's decided then. Yin Yang pulled a long face and said, Old Marshal, please reconsider. This nephew is poor, I can't even afford a maid. It's inevitable that I won't be a good host then. Why don't? This old man is a rough fellow, why would I need a maid to serve me? It's decided then. Qiu Jianhan made the final decision. Yin Yang's mouth hung open helplessly. He had never seen such an unreasonable person. Qiu Jianhan snorted. He had always been paying attention to Yin Yang. But Yin Yang, who was not supposed to be here, was actually here as well on such a special occasion. He could not help but connect the dots. Inexplicably, he felt that Yin Yang was filled with mystery. In spite of this mysterious person was behaving like a popinjay that could not be helped. It was extremely incongruous. As the old marshal hesitated, he suddenly realized that this child's popinjay behavior seemed to only appear in front of him. Your father seems to have been deceived. Qiu Jianhan had even abandoned this old man and started calling himself your father. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this deceiving fellow was guilty of the most heinous crime. Suddenly, there was a commotion in front of them. Silhouettes darted about continuously. It was a group of imperial guards who had rushed over. Yin Yang pursed his lips and said, Old Marshal, Sir Mi is here. Things are getting worse. Dong Tianling and the others grew nervous once more. Qiu Yunsan had been extremely impulsive in this matter. He had captured someone else's family indiscriminately. Even if it was understandable that he had been tricked, he had completely lost this advantage when he had captured someone else's family. As for you, a young master of the Qiu family who was not the direct heir, you had challenged a nation's imperial director in someone else's base camp in Tiantang City. Chapter 111. If Mi Kongquan had entered the Qiu family's territory and entered the martial world, it would not have been difficult for the Qiu family to toy with him to death, as long as he had left Tiantang City. However, they were in Tiantang City after all. It would not be difficult for Mi Kongquan to toy with Qiu Yunsan to death as the local tyrant. Groups of imperial guards arrived one after another. Without saying a word, they first occupied the high ground, and then began to set up defenses in all directions. They did not interfere with Qiu Yunsan and the others, nor did they save anyone. They only watched the scene unfold. In spite of this, the number of people increased, forming an absolute suppression of power. Old Marshal Qiu's expression grew uglier as he muttered a curse. Damned eunuch, how arrogant! Yin Yang said to Dong Tianling, intentionally or otherwise. Little Lung, how many people have come from your family this time? I'm afraid the situation isn't looking good. The Qiu family is most likely going to suffer a loss. Dong Tianling was already sweating as he said with a dark expression. Our family has the least people. Other than me, there are only 2 guards. Now, Dong Tianling's worry was evident in his words. What should we do? How did things become so serious? Old Marshal Qiu Jianhan's expression had darkened completely. Scuffling footsteps could be heard, as if the soles of their shoes were scraping against the ground with each step, as they walked over slowly. The sound was messy, making one's heart flutter. Then 5 silhouettes walked out slowly from the other end of the street. Every one of them was slightly hunched over. Each of them was fair and beardless. Each of them wore a eunuch's uniform. Each of them wore a deadpan expression, their gazes unmoving like zombies. Each of them had a horsetail whisk in their arms. Each of them was walking with their feet splayed out. This group of people had turned the corner of the street in the middle of the night, but it gave everyone a sense of eeriness. The one in the middle was taller than the rest. He was middle-aged, beardless, pale, and muscular. His gaze was colder as well. He seemed to be the leader of the group. However, Yun Yang's gaze fell on the face of the person on his right. Eunuch Wu, whom he had almost killed with a single slap, and had half of his teeth knocked out, was also the familiar silhouette, who had attempted to assassinate him in front of the residence of Yun. This person had been hiding in the depths of the palace ever since that day. Yun Yang had never had the chance to see him again. This was the first time he had seen this person appear in front of him after the assassination attempt. Using Dong Tianling's body as a cover, Yun Yang observed the eunuch carefully. As far as the eye could see, his footsteps were still weak, his eyes were dull, and his body was not tall and straight. From head to toe, there was still no sign of cultivation. If anyone saw him, they would instantly come to the conclusion that he was a eunuch who had lost his body, a eunuch who did not have many years left to live. In spite of this, Yun Yang noticed something that others would not have noticed. He had knocked out many of his teeth the other day, so this fellow's cheeks should have been deflated. However, they looked full now. It was as if he had never been injured. This was thought-provoking. As if sensing Yun Yang's gaze, Eunuch Wu lifted his head to look in his direction. Seeing Yun Yang who was glaring at him, a deep hatred flashed in his eyes. Young Master Chiu. The eunuch in the middle was Keeper Mi Kongchuan himself. Mi Kongchuan squinted his eyes. His gaze focused on Chiu Yunsan who was in the crowd and said faintly, "We're all friends after all. Isn't it a little too much for you to do this?" Chiu Yunsan was enraged. F*CKU. Is it a little too much for you to set me up? Mi Kongchuan, don't you try this with me. Let me ask you, how do you plan to give me an explanation? Mi Kongchuan narrowed his eyes and said coldly, I only want to know, what kind of explanation do you want, young Master Chiu? Chiu Yunsan snorted coldly and said, Mi Kongchuan, you've set me up and tarnished the Chiu family's reputation. You've even made me fall into your trap, and almost lost my reputation. I'm indebted to you for your hospitality. Do I have any other way other than to take your life? Mi Kongchuan chuckled coldly. I'm afraid the explanation that young Master Chiu wants isn't easy to ask for. He chuckled coldly. Young Master Chiu is in Yutong's capital city, right under the emperor's feet. Yet you've brazenly kidnapped innocent citizens. You're so brazen, completely disregarding the nation's laws. I wonder how young Master Chiu plans to give the empire of Yutong. Chiu Yunsan was stunned and said angrily, Mi Kongchuan, are you going to talk about an explanation with me? Mi Kongchuan sneered. Talk about what? I, Mi Kongchuan, am also a citizen of Yutong. How can I allow a lowly person like you to do as you please? Today, I'll take you down first and go to the Chiu family to ask for forgiveness from the Chiu family's old patriarch. It's only right that I give an explanation to the old patriarch then. Chiu Yunsan chortled. Mi Kongchuan, don't you dare. Mi Kongchuan's gaze was vicious. Young Master Chiu will know whether I dare or not very soon. Seeing that both parties were getting more, and that Chiu Yunsan's eyes were spitting fire, and he was about to attack, Yun Yang sighed instinctively. Chiu Yunsan was still too young. Even if he had a plan, he was still too impulsive. Mi Kongchuan had been talking about the country of Yutong. Every word he said was righteous. If Chiu Yunsan were to be stubborn, and even make the first move, the Chiu family would not be able to say anything even if he were to be killed here today. A sliver of disappointment flashed across old Marshal Chiu Jianhan's eyes. Chiu Yunsan's original intention was to put the matter on the martial world's grudge, and he had used this argument to force old Marshal Chiu to retreat. However, he did not, or rather, he did not manage to do so in time. Mi Kongchuan had seized the initiative, and caused the subsequent development to change completely. He was still too young. Mi Kongchuan. Old Marshal Chiu said faintly. Old Marshal. Mi Kongchuan bowed respectfully. Although he was the emperor's valet, he knew that if he were to really fight with Chiu Jianhan, he would be the unlucky one. You talk about the righteousness of the nation. This old man would like to ask you, what was the righteousness of the nation when you plotted against Chiu Yunsan? Chiu Jianhan asked. What was the righteousness of the nation when you plotted against Chiu Yunsan? Mi Kongchuan lifted his head abruptly. Old Marshal. It was obvious that Chiu Jianhan did not want to give him time to explain. He cut him off and said, you plotted to drag this old man's wife into this as well. What was the righteousness of the nation? Mi Kongchuan was stunned. Then he looked aggrieved as he said, Old Marshal, I know you're Chiu Yunsan's uncle and Chiu Yunsan is your nephew, but you. Chiu Jianhan frowned and said, this is the empire of Yutong Tiantang City. What do you mean by uncle and nephew? Is this your reason? Or are you saying that this old man is playing favoritism and cheating now? Not only did you not answer this old man's question about the righteousness of the nation, you've even brought the topic to our family. What a beautiful trick you've played. Mi Kongchuan, is this the answer you're giving this old man? Mi Kongchuan said angrily. Old Marshal doesn't care about the thugs who openly threaten and kidnap people. Instead, you're pressuring me, a victim. What is the meaning of this? This old man doesn't mean anything. The old marshal pointed at the imperial guards around him and said faintly, you're the major domo of the imperial household. But how can you mobilize so many imperial guards? Where's the warrant to mobilize the troops? Show it to this old man. This old man is very interested to know who has given you such a great authority. The tip of Mi Kongchuan's nose was already sweating as he said in a shrill voice. This major domo has the authority to mobilize the imperial guards to encircle and annihilate the traitors who plot against the palace. Chiu Jianhan pressed on. What a great accusation. May I ask where the palace is? And where is this place? Major domo Mi, your so-called authority can't be used arbitrarily even in the palace. How can it be done unless it's an emergency? Now that you've brought the imperial guards out of the palace and come here with such fanfare, who has given you the authority to do so? This is the nation's military force, the force that guards the palace. It's not a private army that a mere eunuch like you, Mi Kongchuan, a eunuch can command. Chiu Jianhan's tone was stern. If he did not step forward, his nephew would definitely be at a disadvantage. It would be a grievance that he had to keep to himself. It would not be for nothing, but it could very well cost his life. While he could turn the situation around by stepping forward like this, he would definitely offend this person, who was close to His Majesty the Emperor. There would be no end to the trouble. Facing old Marshal Chiu's forceful approach, Mi Kongchuan's gaze was filled with resentment. Chiu Jianhan did not speak to Mi Kongchuan anymore, but turned to look at the imperial guards on the wall. Which one of you is the leader? Come here. A burly guard leaped down. Old Marshal, show me the tiger tally that mobilizes you. The old marshal extended his arm and said in an unquestionable tone, let me see who allowed all of you to leave the palace. Who signed the order to allow all of you to follow Mi Kongchuan out? The leader of the guards was flushed. No. Their trip this time was purely on their own. How could there be any tiger tally? No. The old marshal's expression turned dangerous. You all came out just like that without any? Your mission is to protect the palace. Protect His Majesty. How can you leave your post without permission? If something happens in the palace, how many heads do you have to bear the responsibility? Even if you don't want your own life, do you want the lives of your family? The leader of the guards was flushed. This humble official. All of you scram back. Chiu Jianhan glared at them. Do you really want this old man to chase all of you away? Go back and be vigilant. If there's a next time, this old man shall report this to His Majesty and punish you severely. I shall exterminate your entire family. Save all of you from risking your lives like this. Yes. Chapter 112. Swoosh. In just a short moment, all the imperial guards had left. Only 5 eunuchs were left in the hall. At this point, the difference in strength between the two sides had been reversed. Mi Kongquan was trembling with rage. His slender eyes glared at Qiu Jianhan like a venomous snake, filled with viciousness. Qiu Jianhan waved his sleeves and said faintly, "This old man can't be bothered to get involved in martial world grudges and personal matters like yours. I'm warning all of you. Don't stir up trouble in the imperial city, or else this old man will not let you off easily. Let's go. Mi Kongquan. I'll settle our scores with you after you've settled these trivial matters. I won't take advantage of you today as well. You're on your own now." The old marshal turned around angrily and strode away without giving anyone a chance to speak. Yun Yang and the others were in awe as they watched from the side. Old Marshal Qiu was an expert. The older the ginger, the spicier it was indeed. His roguish methods were truly impressive. Yun Yang could not help but be impressed. Old Marshal Qiu Jianhan's roguish domineering method was a stroke of genius. Seeing that his nephew could not hold on any longer, he had intervened immediately before the situation worsened. Once he had struck, he had aimed for Mi Kongquan's vital points without holding back. With a few simple words, he spoke of the nation's righteousness, giving Mi Kongquan a taste of his own medicine. He had suppressed Mi Kongquan's arrogance to the point that he could not even retaliate. As long as Mi Kongquan dared to argue, Qiu Jianhan would capture him directly and execute him on the spot, would only be a matter of convenience. Even though Mi Kongquan was aware of the severity of the situation and dared not argue, old Marshal Qiu had chased the other party's men away with his official authority and righteousness, leaving the other party without an army, pulling old Marshal Qiu who was already at his limits. He had even said before he left, "The martial world is the martial world. This old man can't be bothered with it. This old man does not take advantage of others." He had left just like that. No, old Qiu seemed to have left a threat before he left. "I'll settle the score with you after you're done here. If you don't handle it well, this old man will really settle the score with you." Settle the score. Let's see how you deal with my nephew. My nephew is dealing with you. If you get hurt, or die, it's your bad luck. But if my nephew does anything wrong, then we'll continue to settle the score. The thickness of their skin could not be described as being as thick as a city wall. At the very least, they had to be as thick as a city wall. This is what a troublemaker is. This is what an old hooligan is. This is the pinnacle of being unreasonable. This is the highest realm. To look up to a high mountain and be intimidated. I'm utterly impressed. Yin Yang reflected on himself deeply. In terms of being shameless, being a pain in the neck, acting like a hooligan, and being unreasonable, there was a lot of room for improvement. There was a lot more that he needed to learn. Look at the old marshal. When his nephew was at a complete disadvantage, he only needed one move to turn the situation around. This kind of method was many times more brilliant than the twists and turns he had just thought of. Simple, brutal, and direct. In spite of this, the effect was immediate and penetrating. It was truly remarkable. Looking at the 5 eunuchs who were dumbfounded on the spot, the crowd almost burst out laughing. How could a few eunuchs who had been living in the palace all year round want to compete with a veteran hooligan like Qiu Jianhan? An old hooligan, an old troublemaker. It was not even on the same technical level. Everything else aside, both parties were separated by an important organ. Mi Kongquan narrowed his eyes, looking at the direction where Qiu Jianhan had left, and snorted coldly. The old marshal's parting words are very reasonable. It's just a trivial personal matter. There's no need to stir up such a commotion. It's getting late now, let's settle the score quickly. It's not a big deal after all. Let's end it quickly. Yun Yang strode out gracefully and began to smooth things over. Actually, I feel that this is a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding here and there. Keeper Mi isn't an outsider and young Master Qiu is a friend as well. Let's talk amicably and end this misunderstanding. How about that? Mi Kongquan's cold gaze swept over Yun Yang, obviously not knowing who this fellow who had popped out of nowhere was. Who did he think he was to forcefully pretend to be a peacemaker at such a critical juncture? Did he have the authority to do so? It's alright if you all really don't want to talk. Yun Yang changed his tone immediately when he saw that no one was responding. Every grievance has its perpetrator. Every debt has its debtor. The martial world's matters shall be settled in the martial world. Let's settle this grudge, using the martial world's methods here. Isn't that satisfying? Let's fight. Whoever has the bigger fist is the one with the bigger reason. Yunyang said. Anyway, there are 4 noble families on one side and 5 eunuchs on the other. According to the numbers, 5 is still more than 4. Why don't I share one as well? This must be Eunuch Wu over there. We're old acquaintances, let's have a chat. I'll leave the rest to you all. What a shameless statement. Yunyang had already sprung up and charged towards Eunuch Wu when everyone else was still in a daze after he finished speaking. This time, I, Lord Jiao, will have a good look at what kind of material this guy's foundation is made of. On the other side, Chiao Yunsen readily agreed. What Boss Yun said is exactly what I want. Release Keeper Mi's men. We'll only entertain Keeper Mi alone today. All of you attack. Before his words echoed in the air, the 8 guards of the 4 noble families and the rest of the guards swarmed forward. They were all experienced in the martial world. When the Imperial Guards had gathered earlier, there was a huge disparity in their strengths. Naturally, they dared not make any reckless moves. However, the tables had turned now, and old Marshal Chiao's implied killing intent before he left was obvious. Of course, it would be best if they could keep Keeper Mi here forever, especially when they had the upper hand in this battle, where they had the advantage of numbers. It would be a great favor to them. How could Dong Tianling and the rest be left behind? We're here too. F***CK. You weren't the only one who was tricked this time. We've been implicated after this as well. We have to find Mi Kongquan for this as well. Yes, I have to ask him for compensation for my pockmarks. Me too. Shui Yuehan is most likely his accomplice. You're right. They must be together. Watch out for my fist. On the other side, Eunuch Wu's expression changed when he saw Yin Yang's overbearing approach. Without another word, he ran away. Yin Yang chased after the eunuch, throwing a large brick in his hand like a shooting star. It landed squarely on the back of Eunuch Wu's head with a loud thud, eliciting a low grunt from the other party. This was only the beginning. Yin Yang had somehow managed to grab 7 to 8 bricks in his hands and was hurling them at Eunuch Wu. Eunuch Wu struggled with all his might, and when he finally made it to the corner, he was already hit by 5 to 6 bricks. He was bleeding profusely, and his face was swollen. Yin Yang was inexplicably pleased, thinking that this fellow dared not expose his ability in front of others indeed. However, he liked this the most. You're afraid to expose yourself. I'll kill you directly. Let's see if you choose to expose yourself, or be beaten to death by me. Roaring loudly, Yin Yang chased after Eunuch Wu like he was flying. Turning the corner, he could not help being stunned. The entire path was empty, but Eunuch Wu was nowhere to be seen. He ran away. Yin Yang turned back immediately, not giving this fellow the chance to assassinate him. He could not defeat him now. It was already good enough that he could take advantage of the situation. This fellow will reveal his true cultivation base once he's out of sight, not giving me a chance to attack. Yin Yang thought as he walked. But shouldn't this fellow be on the same side as Mi Kongquan? Why doesn't he dare show his ability in front of him? He'd rather be beaten half to death and humiliated to the point where he's worse than a pig or a dog. Why is he unwilling to show his ability? This was a mystery that he could not solve. However, Yun Yang believed that he would be able to solve it very soon. This fellow had suffered 2 consecutive losses in his hands. It would be strange if he did not want to seek revenge. Based on the fact that he had come back for revenge the last time, it was not difficult to determine this person's vengeful nature. He believed that he would definitely come for another assassination later. As long as he came for him again, Yun Yang would be able to find out the truth. When Yun Yang turned back to take a look at the battle, he was shocked. There were 4 eunuchs left, including Mi Kongquan. 3 of them had been defeated, leaving only Mi Kongquan to put up a fight. Mi Kongquan's ability was extraordinary. Even when he was facing the 4 noble young masters, 8 guards, and 30 to 40 other experts' attacks, he was still able to handle the situation with ease. His body was like a swimming dragon as he weaved through the crowd. Occasionally, he would strike, and there would definitely be someone retreating, spitting blood. This General Steward Mi was a top master, who was rarely seen in this world. With his own strength, He was able to withstand the combined attack of 40 to 50 experts. Although the majority of the attackers were at the 4th or 5th peak, the 8 guards were all at the 6th peak and above. There were even 2 experts who had reached the 7th peak. With such a strong combined ability, he could not even take care of Mi Kongquan. From Yun Yang's observation, Mi Kongquan had not even given his all, and was still holding back. He did not know if it was old Marshal Chio's warning ringing in his ears, or if he himself knew that a head-on fight would not prove anything. It could even give both parties a buffer to step down. If he were to accidentally kill these 4 popinjays, then, even if he were to hide in the palace forever, he would never be able to escape from the 4 noble families' deadly pursuit. Yun Yang's gaze was sharp. He could see through this in just a blink of an eye. At the same time, he came to the final conclusion that they were powerless to kill Mi Kongquan tonight. Chapter 113. No matter how popinjays the 4 noble young masters were, they were still aware of the fact that they were powerless against the strong. Obviously, they had realized this as well. Just as they were worried that they would not be able to back down, they retreated in unison upon hearing Yun Yang's voice, as if they had received a divine command. Mi Kongquan's chilling gaze fell upon Yun Yang once more, his anger rising again. It's that brat again. Just now, when they had the advantage in numbers, this brat suggested to solve the problem by ganging up on them. Now, seeing that so many people could not defeat him, he actually jumped out to be the peacemaker for a moment. Keeper Mi could not help feeling that although this child was young, his shamelessness was no less than Qiu Jinhan's. What AF * King Genius? In spite of it, Mi Kongquan wanted to put an end to this matter as well. Things might really get out of hand if they were to continue. Seeing that the other party had stopped, he jumped out of the circle as well. We're all people of status after all. Yun Yang walked to the center of the circle and said earnestly, "How can we fight and kill so savagely?" Mi Kongquan and the 4 young masters rolled their eyes at the same time. You just said that we're all martial artists, and that we can settle our problems with a fight. The martial world is the martial world, and so on. The words are still ringing in our ears. But we've all become people of status, just because the situation isn't right. This guy could say anything with just a flip of his tongue. What's the problem? What's the misunderstanding? Can't we just talk it out face to face? There's no need to resort to violence. Yun Yang continued to mediate. Young Master Qiu, it's better to squash enmity than to keep it alive. We've fought for so long, and our anger should have dissipated. Why don't we have a peaceful talk? Qiu Yunsan thought to himself. My anger hasn't dissipated, it's just that I can't beat him. Mi Kongquan thought to himself. My anger hasn't subsided, but there's no benefit in continuing this fight. Keeper Mi. Yun Yang looked at Mi Kongquan and said, I've heard about the whole story as well. You've probably done something bad out of good intentions, causing young Master Qiu to be in trouble right away. And it's a little more serious, am I right? He turned to Qiu Yunsan. What about you, young Master Qiu? You're young and arrogant, aren't you? Since we've lost face, we have to get it back. That's understandable, don't you think? Both sides nodded simultaneously. How about this? I will propose a solution for both of you to consider. Yun Yang said. What about you, young Master Qiu? First, send all the people you've invited back. I believe you don't have the intention to kidnap or threaten them. You're only joking with Keeper Mi. Compensate each of them with 100 silver taels as compensation for their fright. That's not a lot, is it? As for these 3 eunuchs, each of them will have to pay 1,000 taels of silver for their medical fees. Yun Yang replied. Then young Master Qiu's problem will be solved. He turned to look at Mi Kongquan and said, however, Steward Mi's handling of the matter was indeed a little inappropriate. How about this? Since young Master Qiu has agreed to bury the hatchet, Steward Mi shall symbolically take out some Imperial Luminary paste to settle this matter. Imperial Luminary paste? Mi Kongquan's tone had changed as he stared at Yun Yang with wide eyes. Are you trying to be a peacemaker? You are obviously trying to extort money from us. On the other side, Qiu Yunsan's eyes shone as he said, Boss is right. As long as Steward Mi takes out 5 portions of Imperial Luminary paste, We will write off today's matter. Pretend that it never happened. Dong Tianling and the other two men's eyes shone as well. Brother Chiu is right. We are friends with Keeper Me. Why do we have to damage our friendship? As long as you give us 5 portions of Imperial Luminary Paste, we will bury the hatchet and wipe it all away. Mi Kongquan laughed in exasperation. What a good plan you have. This is absolutely impossible. The Imperial Luminary Paste was one of Yutong's imperial secret medicines. Its effects were extremely potent. Back when Yutong was founded, His Majesty had obtained the carcass of a legendary mystical beast, the Yin-Yang snake, by chance. It was also because he had eaten the Yin-Yang snake's flesh that he had attained the unrivaled mystical skill. He had beheaded generals and seized flags, triumphed in every battle, building his influence step by step until he had founded the Empire of Yutong. The entire Empire of Yutong now was a country that had been built from nothing, built with bare fists. It was evident how potent the Yin-Yang snake was. In spite of this, the strongest part of the Yin-Yang snake was not its flesh but its inner core. This inner core was recognized by the entire Tianxian continent as the only remaining top-notch mystical beast, the Yin-Yang snake's inner core. Cultivators in this realm could not consume it to enhance their cultivation base. Even a grandmaster's top-notch expert would only explode and die if he consumed it. A treasure that could not be used was of little value, no matter how precious it was. Initially, this super inner core had been reduced to a symbolic treasure for quite some time. However, by chance, Yutong's imperial family had accidentally discovered that this inner core that could not be consumed to enhance one's cultivation base could be brewed into wine. Furthermore, the wine that was brewed was extraordinary. The process of brewing the wine was simple. The inner core was placed in a bowl filled with wine for a day and a night. The wine in the bowl would then condense into a semi-solid paste. There was only the bottom of the bowl. However, after consuming the bottom of the bowl, one would be invincible. The man's ability would be outstanding. This was secondary. What was more important was that, if there was a powerful expert by his side to assist him, a gifted person could cultivate immediately after consuming the luminary paste. With the help of the expert beside him to inject mystical chi into him, it was possible for him to awaken another chakra, on top of his innate foundation. This was what made the luminary paste truly extraordinary. Although it was only a possibility of awakening another chakra, this was the only way to break through the innate chakra in the entire Tianxian continent. In this world, only Yutong's palace had this incredible item. Now, Yin Yang wanted 5 portions at once. This was more than just asking for an exorbitant price. It was robbery, a blatant robbery. How could Mi Kongquan agree to such a condition? Absolutely impossible. Mi Kongquan vetoed. The luminary paste is the imperial palace's secret medicine, and His Majesty the Emperor controls it personally. You're not just making things difficult for me. You have no intention of reconciling at all. Otherwise, why would you make such an impossible request? Mi Kongquan was the minister of imperial household after all. Even when he was at a disadvantage, he had long had the intention of reconciling. However, he rejected the harsh conditions directly with a resolute attitude. You want to exchange for the luminary paste with a few thousand silver taels? Isn't it too cheap? You're the ones who kidnapped them. Even the greediest robber in this world would never make such a request. Qiu Yinsen chuckled darkly. Others might not be able to do it, but Keeper Me must have a way. Even if Keeper Me really doesn't have a solution, he has to think of a way to achieve it. There's no way around this. Mi Kongquan said. Aren't the few of you thinking too highly of me? I'm the minister of imperial household, but I'm only a servant with a handicapped body. How can I have such a fantastic item like the luminary paste? If the few young masters insist on making things difficult for me, I'll gladly oblige. It's nothing more than a life and death struggle. If Yin Yang had not mentioned the luminary paste, Qiu Yunsan and the other 3 young masters might have been fooled by Mi Kongquan's words without knowing it. Now, however, all these concerns were gone. The only thing that filled the ears of the 4 young masters was the luminary paste. To these 4 fellows who were almost drained by wine and women, no treasure in this world could compare to the luminary paste's allure. With such an enticement in front of them, it would be worth it even if they had to gamble with their lives. Chen Wanfeng snorted and said, "Is Keeper Mi's declaration to fight with his life on the line? It's a pity that the four of us have never been afraid of this, nor are we easily intimidated. If Keeper Mi is determined to do so, we'll make a big scene here tonight." Xia Bingchuan chuckled darkly. "That's right. Perhaps we can't keep Keeper Mi here with our combined strength, but none of Keeper Mi's clansmen can live. Right. Keeper Mi, even if you can escape with your life, I don't know how many % of your life is left. Is it 10% or 20%? So what if I manage to escape with my life? After this battle, we're all enemies of life and death. We, the four noble families, will hunt you down immediately. We won't rest until we're dead." Dong Tianling raised his head gracefully. "I can say here and now that we'll find you before you've recovered from your injuries. You'll be sent to the underworld. The four of us are willing to swear to the heavens that we'll work together to make this claim," Qiu Yunsan said. "Therefore, if Keeper Mi isn't willing to take out the luminary paste to express his sincerity, then there's nothing to talk about," Chen Wanfeng said. "Even if you don't fight with your life, we won't let you go." With an irresistible temptation before them, these four fellows spoke one after another, trying their best to put on a show. Every word they uttered hit the nail on the head, showcasing the domineering nature of the young masters of noble families. Mi Kongquan was extremely miserable, his anger growing. However, he felt more aggrieved than the other two as he said angrily, "What you're asking for is the luminary paste. Was that something simple? That's the imperial family's top secret medicine. Although the yin-yang snake's inner core can be made into the luminary paste, it can only produce 10 portions of it every year. Any more, and it won't be effective. If it's 1 or 2 portions, I'll think of something. Perhaps there's still room for negotiation. But you're asking for 5 portions? Isn't this asking for too much? We don't care." Dong Tianling was unreasonable. "This is the only condition. If you agree to it, we'll shake hands and talk. If you don't, we'll fight to the death." Mi Kongquan's eyes were about to spit fire as he glared at Dong Tianling, not speaking for a long time. After a long time, he suddenly turned around. Pa pa pa. The 3 eunuchs behind him were all killed in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. Their brains burst open, and they died on the ground. Chapter 114. Mi Kongquan's gaze was as sharp as a blade as it swept across their faces. All of them felt as if their faces had been slashed by a steel saber. It was so sharp that it hurt. "Nice." Qiu Yunsan was delighted as he waved his hand. "Release them." Mi Kongquan snorted coldly and sprung up. He made a turn in the air and disappeared without a trace. He did not even have the patience to take another look at these people. If it wasn't for his unfinished business, he would have disregarded everything and attacked with all his strength. Even if he had to flee to the ends of the world, he would kill all 4 of these annoying fellows to vent the anger in his heart. "Got it. The luminary paste is in my hands." Qiu Yunsan leaped high, beaming with delight. Dong Tianling and the other 2 were beaming with delight as well, immeasurably satisfied. "I didn't expect this old thing to actually have the ability to obtain the Empire of Yutong's royalty's exclusive item. It's true. If it weren't for Boss' reminder, we wouldn't have thought of this at all. It's all thanks to Boss. Boss is our lucky star. It's really great. I must marry a few more concubines when I go back. I used to worry that I'd be too frivolous and play myself to death. It's all right now. I don't have to worry anymore." "What about the extra portion?" Chen Wanfeng asked. "Why is there an extra portion? Including Boss, isn't it better if each of us gets one?" Dong Tianling glared at him. "Idiot, what do you mean?" Chen Wanfeng shook his head quickly. "That's exactly what I meant. I'm only saying this to test you all, to see if you're sincere towards Boss." "Tisk," the 3 of them scoffed. Anyone could see that Chen Wanfeng had other ideas just now, but of course, he would not expose them now. Yin Yang snorted and said, "It's a shame that you all still have some conscience. Keep it for yourselves. If I'm not mistaken, I wouldn't dare to eat the luminary paste, even if he really sent it over this time." "Why?" Dong Tianling asked. "Would he dare to poison it?" Why doesn't he dare to poison it? Yin Yang snorted. 99% of the reason I dare not kill all of you today is because I'm wary of old Marshal Chiu and the four noble families' follow-up tactics. However, if all of you were to die a few days later, it would be reasonable for the old man in the palace to say that he didn't know. Even if your family wants to vent their anger on me, my cultivation is still intact, and there is life everywhere. What's more, as long as the four of you are confirmed to be dead, the other party will immediately disappear. The sky is high and the earth is high, but where will you find them? Yin Yang looked at the four fellows in exasperation. Do you lot roam the martial world so carelessly? It's just a small profit, and you've completely obliterated your vigilance? The four of them were dumbfounded and looked at each other. No, it can't be. Chen Wanfeng opened his mouth like a catfish. He swore to the heavens just now. Heh. Yin Yang waved his hand and turned to leave. I know all of you can't let go of your obsession with obtaining the luminary paste, but be careful no matter how you look forward to it. Maybe the luminary paste is the real thing, just that it's mixed with something else. What if someone dies after eating it? Listening to Yin Yang's alarmist talk, the popinjays looked as if they had been struck by lightning. It couldn't be. They had gone through so much to get their hands on the legendary luminary paste for men. But there was actually something fishy about it. When they came back to their senses, Yin Yang had already disappeared. Boss words must be reasonable, Dong Tianling said. When the luminary paste comes 3 days later, I won't eat it immediately. I'll keep it first. If you lot aren't afraid, you can eat it first. The other three were fuming. King Dong Tianling, are you asking us to test the poison for you? Yin Yang had left quickly. Just as he exited the alley, he swiftly executed his movement skill and left. At this moment, Yin Yang had a vague feeling that someone was waiting for him. Someone was waiting for him. No, it should be said that the person had never left, but had been eyeing him. Since you haven't left and have a vengeful heart, this young master will not let go of this opportunity tonight. I can play with you to my heart's content. As expected, as he walked out and headed in the direction of the residence of Yin, the feeling of being followed became clearer and clearer along the way. It also became more and more familiar. Yin Yang continuously cultivated the fog of cloud conjuration as he walked. When he passed by a corner, he waved his hands casually, and a few white silhouettes left his side without a sound, swiftly blending into the darkness of the night. One of the white silhouettes sprinted towards the residence of Yin like an arrow. Yin Yang was halfway there. Just as he was about to turn the next corner, he suddenly stopped and scratched his head, muttering in annoyance. What kind of memory is this? I've forgotten again. He turned around and walked back. It seemed like he was going back to get something. Those who were watching him in the dark cursed out loud. Ck, this bastard was about to reach the perfect ambush spot that he had set up. Why did he turn back? He was walking rather fast too. Fine. Your father will chase after him and kill him. With a swoosh, he flew up to the roof soundlessly and covered 100 feet. After a few leaps, he felt that he was already in front of Yin Yang and stretched his head to look. Yin Yang, who was walking over, suddenly slapped his head and heaved a long sigh. Sigh. I'm really stupid. Do I have to go back tonight to get it? It won't delay me even if I go tomorrow. The road is not close. Standing on the road, he pondered for a while, scratching his ears and cheeks. Finally, he turned back. I'd better go home first, wash up and sleep. Then he took large strides forward. The person in the dark was so angry that his lungs were about to explode when he saw this. Ck, how could this bastard achieve anything with such an indecisive attitude? However, no matter how easy the target was, he had no choice but to sneak back. Yin Yang came near the corner again. When he was about 100 feet away, he suddenly stopped and looked to the side. Hey, why is there a kitten here? I can bring it back to keep the few at home company. The person in the dark was infuriated and piqued. Indeed, there was a small white thing at the corner of the wall. This young master Yin Yang had actually gone to catch the kitten. The kitten seemed to be a little difficult to catch. Yin Yang had gone around it a few times, but could not even catch a strand of its fur. In the end, he had to use mystical chi to restrain the kitten. As he held it in his arms, he was actually comforting it with a gentle voice. It was a very pretentious act. Little fellow, how obedient would you have been if you had done this earlier? Isn't that right? Isn't it more comfortable to be hugged by me than on the cold ground? You're such an ignorant little fellow. Sigh, I'm doing a good deed by bringing you back today. Kitty, you don't know, but I saw a few eunuchs tonight, and they were so disgusting. Ah, the smell on your body. The person in the dark was so furious that he fell back. He really wanted to rush forward and ask Yun Yang. Yun Yang, are you sick? Are you? That was more than enough. However, Yun Yang had to walk over eventually. He walked slowly with his head lowered, one hand caressing the little white kitten in his arms lovingly as he murmured, Kitten, shall I give you a name? You'll follow me from now on. Big White. You don't like it? Xiaobai. Xiao Xiaobai. 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 White tail. F***ck. None of these are okay. You don't like them? Why don't I give you a name? I've seen this person tonight. How about you call me Old Wu the eunuch? Kitten, you're a female almost the same as Old Wu. Actually, you're more complete than him. With a clatter, the person in the dark gritted his teeth, almost breaking his molars. He could not hold it in anymore. Although Yun Yang was still 30 to 40 feet away from the corner, where the ambush was set up, the person in the dark did not want to wait any longer. The murderous intent in him was boiling like never before, and could no longer be suppressed. If he did not kill this man, he would not be human. With a swoosh, the person leaped down from the high wall at the corner like a bolt of lightning. His high-speed movements left a trail of afterimages in the air, as a gleaming saber light flashed like a bolt of lightning in the cloudy sky. The chilling murderous intent caused the wind in the night sky to stop flowing temporarily. Yun Yang, who was faced with the sudden killing intent, seemed to be taken aback as he tossed the kitten in his arms away. Oh my God, there's an assassin! Then he moved swiftly, obviously intending to evade the killing intent before him. Although Yun Yang's response was not exactly brilliant, it was still acceptable. He might have been able to evade an ordinary assassin, but the person in the dark had planned for such a long time to kill him. How could he evade it so easily? Swoosh! The saber light glinted as it pierced through Yun Yang's right shoulder. That's right, it pierced through without any hindrance. However, the assassin who had succeeded in his attack was stunned. What was going on? It was a vital point, but why was there no force behind it? How could this be? What was going on? The answer was revealed right away. Yun Yang, who was perfectly fine, had already appeared on the other side. The only difference was that there was a saber in his hand. As soon as the saber appeared, its sharpness was unparalleled, causing the moonlight in the sky to lose its luster. Although the assassin was still baffled by what had just happened, he did not hesitate at all. His body flashed like a phantom, and he was already in front of Yun Yang. He swung his saber straight down, but there was no sound of wind being sliced through. The speed of this slash seemed to be faster than the previous one. With a flick of Yun Yang's wrist, the saber light filled the night sky like a peacock spreading its tail. Chapter 115. The chilling saber light appeared for the first time, like the stars in the sky blinking coldly, as they fell from all directions. The assassin exclaimed in surprise at the sight of such a strange move. As a high-level martial artist, his instincts told him that the other party's saber had actually covered all of his openings. If he had not retracted his saber, he might have been able to injure Yun Yang severely, but his opponent's saber could definitely kill him. What kind of saber skill was this? How could there be such a dazzling and incisive saber skill in this world? My cultivation base is at least 3 levels higher than this fellow's. Logically speaking, even if I stood still, he might not be able to hurt me. Why does it make me feel like my life is being threatened now? He took a step back almost instinctively, the saber in his hand turning outwards to defend himself. He could only feel a gust of chilly wind flashing past him. With a crack, his saber snapped in half without any sign of resistance. The chilly wind blew against his face. Shocked, he took 3 steps back like a phantom, narrowly avoiding the saber that was aimed at his life. He could no longer maintain his illusory form. allowing Yin Yang to see his true form for the first time. Yin Yang chuckled. It really is you. The assassin was Eunuch Wu. He had not even changed out of his eunuch robe. Eunuch Wu, who was 50 feet away, was like a wandering spirit in the night. His eyes under his brows were flickering like willow. The wisp as he stared at Yin Yang eerily and suddenly asked, "What is this skill? What saber skill? What saber?" Yin Yang said lightly, "This is called destiny. Destiny's movement. Destiny's saber truth. Destiny's saber truth. Destiny's saber. In other words, this saber is in my hands. Avoiding your assassination and then killing you. It's all destiny." What Yin Yang had said was the absolute truth, but with his tone of voice, it was filled with a different kind of meaning. Eunuch Wu's grayish-white brows arched as he said faintly, "I see." Suddenly, his body floated up again like a ghost. In an instant, his body turned into countless phantoms. One by one, the phantoms appeared and then disappeared in the air. It was hard to tell what was real and what was real. "I want to see whether your so-called heavens will favor me or you in the end." He casually tossed the remaining half of the broken saber onto the ground. He had used this saber for countless years, and had accompanied him through life and death thousands of times, throwing it away like a pair of worn-out shoes. To a first-rate assassin like Eunuch Wu, things that could not be used were just trash. Why would he care about throwing them away? Chi chi chi. A series of explosions rang out in the air. Eunuch Wu's hands turned into eagle claws and attacked Yin Yang without a trace. Yin Yang did not even spare it a glance. It was still the same style merciless blade. Eunuch Wu retracted his hand and retreated as fast as lightning. He shook his head and said, "Still not enough." After thinking for a moment, Xiao Chen's body suddenly turned into flowing water as he flew over. His palms landed lightly, but they carried a tremendous force. Yin Yang did the same, executing merciless blade again. Although it was already his third time using it, Yin Yang felt that he had gained a deeper understanding of this saber style each time he used it. Especially when he was facing the immense pressure of a mortal enemy. The realization was especially profound. This time, there was an additional ray of starlight amidst the saber light that resembled the stars. Chi-chi. Eunuch Wu was forced to retreat once again. Looking at the front of his shirt that had been torn by the saber's blade, he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. How could this be? He had been through hundreds of battles, and his cultivation base had reached the pinnacle of his life, reaching the pinnacle of the 7th level mystical chi. Yet this child from the Yun family, before him was only at the 3rd or 4th level mystical chi. The gap between their cultivation base was like heaven and earth. Yet, the other party had a saber in his hand, and was able to hold him off with a single move. There was even a risk of him getting hurt if he forced his way in. It was inconceivable. Yin Yang sucked in a deep breath. The 3 consecutive slashes just now were marvelous and flawless, but his mystical chi was on the brink of exhaustion due to the exertion. Luckily, Emmy was there to provide continuous support, but this situation could not last long. Emmy's support had its limits as well. Yin Yang estimated that he would be completely drained after 2 more slashes. Yin Yang could not help but feel a strong sense of helplessness. He could clearly feel that if he had enough power, even if he had a 6th heaven beginner cultivation base, a single merciless blade would definitely be able to slice this powerful enemy in half in an instant. There was an endless murderous intent and a sure kill move, but such a godly skill could only protect himself when facing an enemy 3 levels higher than him. As he pondered, Eunuch Wu suddenly sneered and said faintly, "Young Master Yin, prepare to die." He leaped into the air and floated 20.5 feet in midair, his palm striking down. Air-rending palm. There was still a distance of 20 feet between them, but Yin Yang could already feel a strong, forceful force coming at him. Raising his saber to block the attack, Yin Yang was forced to take 5 steps back with a loud boom. His chest felt like it had been struck by lightning, his face pale. Eunuch Wu saw that a close-range attack was not going to work, so he resorted to a long-range mystical chi attack that consumed the most cultivation base. This was also the attack that Yin Yang could not defend against at the moment. No matter how sharp your saber is, no matter how strong your saber skill is, when faced with such an overwhelming force. Eunuch Wu cackled. What use is your endless techniques? Tonight, this old man will teach you a lesson before you die. Yun Yang suppressed the churning qi and blood in his chest, and said with a faint smile, You're only a crippled eunuch. What right do you have to call yourself an old man? Do you know what a husband means? Do you have the right to be a husband? Do you have the capital? The viciousness of the words was no doubt worse than a million curses to Eunuch Wu. His ruddy face instantly turned ghastly pale. Then it turned ashen. His entire being fell silent, the murderous intent in his eyes overflowing. His rage had reached its peak, but he did not say a word. He took 3 steps in the air, and with these 3 steps, 3 powerful gusts of wind from his palms came hurtling towards Yun Yang. Yun Yang was like a withered leaf in the wind, retreating lightly. In an instant, he flew 150 feet away with the wind. In spite of this, the other party's mystical qi did not diminish. Separated by hundreds of feet, there were still ripples that struck the divine edge. Barf. Yin Yang threw his head back and spat out a mouthful of blood. He staggered, almost losing his footing. Eunuch Wu cackled, his laughter laced with endless resentment. He chased after Yin Yang like a shadow. Young Master Yin, let this crippled eunuch send you on your way. Although I'm crippled, I'm still alive in this world. Young Master Yin, you, who have all 5 parts of your body, can only go to the netherworld. Have a safe journey. He raised his palm like a saber and slammed it down ferociously. Boom! A loud explosion resounded. Eunuch Wu's scrawny body flew 30 feet away like a kite with a broken string. In front of Yun Yang, there was a muscular silhouette that stood tall like a towering mountain. The newcomer was dressed in black, his gaze fixed on Eunuch Wu like lightning. A disdainful smirk hung at the corners of his lips. A eunuch actually wants to send my young master on his way? You've overestimated yourself. It was Feng Mafei. Behind him was Whitey III, who was panting heavily. Eunuch Wu was shocked. The person before him was full of vigor. The force of his palm strike earlier was like a tsunami. His cultivation base was definitely not lower than his own. Who are you? My surname is Mei. A cold voice replied faintly. I'll send you on your way. What's the point of living when your body is crippled? The sooner you die, the sooner you can reincarnate. Eunuch Wu spun around like a whirlwind and struck with his palm. With a bang, one of the people behind him took 3 steps back. His body rolled like a flood dragon that was rolling in the clouds. His palm was like a sharp horn that suddenly pierced through the air. Single-horned flood dragon Mei Wenjian. Eunuch Wu roared, punching and kicking. Residents of Yun's butler, it's actually you. Lao Mei snorted. So what if it's your old man? Without dodging at all, the 2 of them rolled around and fought each other. Feng Mafei's muscular form soared into the air. His palms were like mountain-splitting axes, striking continuously. 2 experts had joined forces to attack Eunuch Wu. Eunuch Wu had already expended a lot of energy in his battle with Yin Yang earlier. Even if he were to face Feng Mafei alone, he would not be able to do so. What was more, there was still Lao Mei, who was not much weaker than Feng Mafei. With an angry roar, he punched Lao Mei and kicked Feng Mafei. His body spun like a whirlwind as he flew into the air. Both of his hands struck out continuously. It was as if he had transformed into a 1,000-armed devil. Pfft! Eunuch Wu spat a mouthful of blood, but he managed to break free from the 2 men's encirclement. He said hoarsely, I shall seek revenge for today. Meow. With a cat's meow, a white silhouette appeared out of thin air like a bolt of lightning, 2 sharp front claws swiping down. A mere lightning. Eunuch Wu snorted coldly and punched. However, the cat that had pounced over suddenly let out a shrill cry. Meow! He shook his head and swung his tail. With a howl, the fist-sized cat head suddenly grew to the size of a wash basin. When he opened his mouth was even bigger than his head. His white fangs flashed with a steel-like sharpness. He met Eunuch Wu's right fist head-on and bit down ferociously. Eclipse Panther. Eunuch Wu was scared out of his wits in that instant. He desperately tried to retract his fist. Even though he reacted quickly, he was still bitten. His fist was drenched in blood, and the pain penetrated deep into his bones. This unforeseen event happened right in front of them, and it was extremely sudden. With a meow, it was an eclipse panther that had pounced over. Eunuch Wu felt his mind go blank. Chapter 116. Seeing that the path ahead was blocked, Eunuch Wu retreated quickly in an attempt to find another way to escape. In spite of that, the leopard in the air did not stop its attack after injuring its enemy. It opened its mouth again. An array of green light shot out from its throat. Swoosh! Eunuch Wu could no longer evade the ambush, as his chest exploded with a pop. The green light then turned into a storm of sharp blades that blossomed in all directions. Ah! Eunuch Wu howled. Almost his entire chest had been torn apart by the wind blades. Blood dripped everywhere as white bone stubs were exposed. The little fellow in the air swayed before it fell with a shake of its head. It was a cub after all, so it could only strike once. Fong Mafei had traversed hundreds of feet like a bolt of lightning, his body as heavy as a mountain. With a shout, 19 consecutive punches fell like 19 heavy hammers. Behind him, Lao Mei appeared like a phantom. The sword in his hand glinted coldly as it turned into 3 rays of light, aiming for Eunuch Wu's back. In an instant, Eunuch Wu, who had been severely injured, was attacked from the front and back at the same time. His life was at stake. Eunuch Wu was naturally unwilling to resign himself to his fate. With a shrill howl, his body spun and his legs danced like a whirlwind. In an instant he kicked Mafei's fists a dozen times. His right hand shook, and a knife appeared in his hand, as if it had materialized out of thin air. Clang, 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 clang. He exchanged 3 blows with Lao Mei. Fong Mafei's strength, Lao Mei's strength, and Eunuch Wu's own recoil force mixed together to form a gravitational whirlpool. Yun Yang, who wanted to finish off the attack, could no longer do so. If he intervened now, it would be equivalent to attacking 3 people at the same time. Not only would his own attack be weakened, he would also have to bear the recoil of the 3 people's combined strength. The loss outweighed the gain. It was better to stay put than to move. He had to observe the situation and find a good opportunity to strike. The 3 people in the whirlpool roared in unison and attacked in a frenzy. This vortex was formed from the combined power of the 3 of them. If any one of them died, their power would collapse, and the vortex would disappear. To Mei and Fong, killing Eunuch Wu as soon as possible was naturally the best method. Naturally, they gave it their all and attacked madly. The pressure Eunuch Wu endured immediately skyrocketed. He was also a decisive person. A perfectly round arrow of blood suddenly sprayed out of his mouth. His face immediately became deathly pale. However, his body rushed into the sky like a sharp sword. Surprisingly, he had used a self-damaging method to forcefully combine the 3 forces into an upward force. Although he had to bear the most direct impact, his entire body flew more than 200 feet in an instant, escaping the range of the vortex where the 3 forces converged. Mei and Fong, on the other hand, were temporarily trapped in the vortex and could not escape immediately. At this moment, Eunuch Wu finally felt relieved. As long as he changed his direction in midair, he would be able to escape unscathed. Who would have thought that he would be reduced to such a state just to take revenge on a youth who had humiliated him? He had to be careful in the future. Perhaps, now that the 2 experts were trapped in the vortex, there was still a sliver of space left. Should he try to ambush Yun Yang and end this trouble once and for all? Just as Eunuch Wu was hesitating, a small white silhouette suddenly appeared in front of him. Another snow-white kitten the size of a palm appeared in front of him. Meow! Eunuch Wu was shocked at first, but then he recalled that the eclipse panther had already exhausted its energy and was powerless. It was already a great fortune to have one eclipse panther, a 9th-level mystical beast. Who could be so amazing as to have 2 at the same time? It was impossible. Childish. Eunuch Wu snorted coldly. Do you think you can fool this old man? He punched out fiercely. He was confident that this punch of his could turn the lightning cat in front of him into minced meat. However, there were some things that one would not believe until it happened. Meow. The kitten in front of him meowed loudly. Suddenly, with a shake of its head, a huge panther head appeared, its fangs glaring as it bit down viciously. Arg! Eunuch Wu was scared out of his wits. Was it really an eclipse panther? Arg! With a loud crack, Eunuch Wu, who was severely injured and could not react in time, was no longer as lucky as before. His right hand was bitten off with a loud crack. However, the little leopard also let out a miserable howl, and its body was sent flying like a ball. In its mouth was Eunuch Wu's complete right hand. Although Eunuch Wu was heavily injured, he still had some strength left in him. The force of the punch had still managed to push the little panther back. Eunuch Wu, who had lost an arm, howled into the sky as he staggered backward in the air, falling straight down. On the other side, Yun Yang had already sprung up to catch the falling panther in his arms. He tossed Eunuch Wu's right hand away in disdain, and hugged the little panther in his arms, his heart aching. The little panther meowed, and fell unconscious in Yun Yang's arms. Eunuch Wu was still descending when another white shadow flashed in front of him. Another junior leopard appeared in front of him, its eyes full of anger. "This old bastard! How dare you hurt my two brothers? Go to hell!" The little panther shook its head and tail as it growled. It opened its mouth and a green glow appeared. As expected, a ball of wind blades flew out. "There's actually another one." Eunuch Wu was filled with despair. "Had I fallen into an eclipse panther's nest tonight? Why are there so many of these things?" However, the ball of wind blades was already in front of him. Eunuch Wu could not dodge or counterattack in time. He closed his eyes and roared, activating all of his mystical chi, potential and life force. Poof, poof, poof. His neck, chest, shoulders, and face were all drenched in blood. His face was almost stripped of flesh, while one of his eyes was struck by a wind blade with a howl. A puddle of black water splattered. One of his eyeballs had been blown out. Eunuch Wu cried out in agony as he fell. Suddenly, with a long howl, his entire body burst forth with a bright brilliance. His entire body was enveloped in a layer of green light. He was like a meteor in the sky, dragging a long tail behind him as he rushed out at an extremely fast speed. It's meteorite soul ignition. Fang Mafei, who had just escaped the whirlpool of energy, could not catch up. Eunuch Wu's current speed had far exceeded the limits of a human's speed, and was still accelerating. It was difficult to catch up. "Young master, dodge. That's the astral soul fusion arcane art." Fang Mafei knew that it was impossible, but he still chased after the eunuch with all his might. At the same time, he shouted a warning, his face drenched in sweat. Astral soul fusion arcane art. This was the ultimate method of turning a person's life force into a shooting star in the sky for the final blow. With such extreme speed, it could even kill someone 3 levels higher. It was indestructible. There was almost no speed that could match the speed of this technique. After this technique, the bearer would have to pay the price of having his blood and life force depleted, his meridians ruptured. Even if God of Zenith wanted to save him, it would be futile. However, there had never been a case of failure when this move was used to recoup his losses. Fang Mafei had never thought that this eunuch who had always been in the palace would possess such an arcane skill. What was more, he had suddenly executed it and turned the tables around. In the blink of an eye, Eunuch Wu was already in front of Yun Yang. He did not slow down at all as he charged straight at Yun Yang. Even if it was a city wall, he would have made a huge hole in it. However, at this critical moment, Yun Yang, who was right in front of him, suddenly disappeared. He had disappeared. He had completely disappeared. What replaced him was a thick cloud of fog. Eunuch Wu's charging figure passed through the cloud of fog without any obstruction. The only damage he had done was to puncture a huge hole in the cloud of fog and take away a large portion of it. That was all. Eunuch Wu's body suddenly stopped after traveling another 100 feet or so. He seemed to have thought of something and fell into a state of shock that he had never experienced before. Like a puppet, he slowly turned around and stared at the cloud mist that had yet to dissipate. There was still a big hole in it. His only remaining eye revealed a look of disbelief. Lao Mei and Fang Mafei had arrived as well. The two of them stared blankly at the cloud with their 4 eyes, only feeling that their minds were in a mess. The cloud of fog thickened and Yun Yang's silhouette gradually reappeared. The cloud of fog that Eunuch Wu had taken away returned to them in wisps as Yin Yang's silhouette gradually became clearer. When the cloud of fog had completely disappeared, Yin Yang stood on the ground weakly in his purple robe. His face was pale and his eyes were lifeless. The three of them could clearly hear the sound of his panting. However, he was still standing, still alive. Even though he looked dispirited, he was still standing. Eunuch Wu's single eye was filled with disbelief, astonishment, shock, and a hint of genuine fear. Eunuch Wu stammered, Supreme Cloud? Slowly, Yin Yang straightened himself. His straight back was like a sharp sword that soared into the sky, its sharpness shining brightly. His gaze became weary but dignified as he said faintly, "That's right, I'm Supreme Cloud." Heh, cough cough. Hee hee, ha ha ha. Eunuch Wu choked and coughed as blood gushed out of his mouth. His blood contained countless pieces of internal organs, but he kept laughing. A miserable smile, a self-mocking smile. His voice was weak, and his life force was like a candle in the wind. I didn't expect to die in the hands of the legendary Lord Supreme Cloud today. It's truly a blessing of 3 lifetimes. This life has not been in vain. Eunuch Wu's eyes were dim. I've worked so hard, but in the end, it's all for naught. The light in his eyes dimmed rapidly as his voice grew weaker. Yin Yang took a step forward, his voice steady. Eunuch Wu, tell me who you are. Eunuch Wu shook his head slowly and murmured, Is there still meaning to it? What month and what day are you? Yin Yang asked. Chapter 117. Before he could finish his sentence, Eunuch Wu's body swayed and fell forward. First he knelt on the ground. His calves and knees were crushed at the same time. Then his whole body fell forward and lay on the ground. His head rolled out of his body. His life force and potential had been completely exhausted. Even his deific consciousness and soul had gone through the meteor soul ignition. His body was like a cracked ceramic that would shatter at the slightest touch. Yin Yang sucked in a deep breath. Autumn had come. It was the mid-autumn festival of the 8th month. It was time for a reunion, it was obvious. Eunuch Wu's identity was the 15th of the 8th month. From spring to autumn, Yin Yang mumbled to himself, feeling more and more that the matter was a mystery to him. This man from the Hall of Autumn had died in his hands so inexplicably. The cause of it was a foolhardy test. It was an unexpected test for both parties. In spite of this, both Yin Yang and Eunuch Wu had not truly realized that the other was their true enemy. Yet the victor of life and death had been decided just like that. Yin Yang turned around. He met Lao Mei and Fang Mafei's gazes that were filled with shock, but also admiration and respect. You, your Lord Supreme Cloud? Lao Mei stammered. Fang Mafei looked at Yin Yang with a burning gaze. Lord Supreme Cloud? Yin Yang sighed softly. Countless memories seemed to flash through his eyes. Finally he said in a lonesome voice, I am now, your young master Yin. Yes, young master. At this moment, Fang Mafei and Lao Mei's bodies were ramrod straight. Both of their eyes were shining with a fiery radiance. They had never thought that the person they had been serving was the Empire's guardian, that the entire nation's people had gone crazy for and worshipped. Such a heroic figure was actually their young master. At this moment, they felt their blood rush to their throats. For a moment, they did not know what to say. It was as if an electric current had passed through their bodies. Supreme Cloud, Heavenly Cloud, Fang Mafei, and Lao Mei felt their eyes moisten at the same time. That was because he was excited, because he felt honored. After the grievous news of the 9 Supremes being attacked, the entire empire of Yutong seemed to be shrouded in a gloomy cloud. Everyone's mood was unprecedentedly heavy, so oppressed that they wanted to fight with their lives on the line. However, the moment he heard the name Supreme Cloud, that feeling vanished without a trace. It was as if the dark clouds that filled the sky had disappeared without a trace the moment these 2 words appeared. Realization dawned on both of them, especially Lao Mei. Why did Yin Yang often disappear and reappear suddenly? Why were there no maids or servants in the mansion? Why was her young master always so mysterious? Now there was an answer to all of this. The young master was Supreme Cloud. That night, the empire of Yutong's capital city was indeed turbulent. The 4 great young masters were going up against the imperial palace chief. More than half of the forces in the capital, were paying close attention to the subsequent development of the situation. Although Mi Kongquan had personally confirmed that he had reconciled with the four fellows, and that it was just a misunderstanding, none of the four eunuchs he brought out had returned. This was intriguing. For the imperial palace, this was not a small matter. No matter how Mi Kongquan was the imperial palace chief, no matter how powerful he was, he had to give an explanation. As far as this matter was concerned, the four young masters were unscrupulous in their actions. This was pardonable and even understandable. In spite of this, Mi Kongquan had done it without any qualms, even mobilizing a large number of imperial guards. This was something to ponder. Early the next morning, the various forces who had been anticipating the subsequent developments were surprised to find that no one had mentioned the matter anymore. It was as if the huge incident last night was just a gentle breeze that passed without a trace. Qiu Jianhan was too lazy to say anything. At the same time, he was waiting for Keeper Mi's follow-up, observing the changes quietly. As for the others, not even the imperial censors who usually stirred up trouble had jumped out to accuse them. Even Qiu Jianhan felt that this matter was rather odd. Subconsciously, he exchanged a glance with Leng Douyin, only to see that the latter's eyes were filled with confusion as well. Qiu Jianhan frowned at once. If he were to say that he had overlooked something while being part of the plot, Leng Douyin, who was not part of it, would not have noticed it either. This matter was getting more and more out of hand. Yun Yang went into cultivation mode immediately when he returned to his residence. The battle tonight had been full of twists and turns, far beyond Yun Yang's expectations. Most importantly, his intention had never been to kill. He wanted to find out more about the mastermind behind this eunuch Wu. However, his initial intention had obviously fallen through. In spite of this, there was another unexpected gain in today's battle other than martial arts and destiny saber art. Eunuch Wu was actually from the Hall of Autumn. He had been dealing with the Hall of Spring all this while, but he could not get out of this circle. Now someone from the Hall of Autumn had popped out of nowhere? It was a strange matter indeed. I believe that Mi Kongquan is from the Hall of Spring. Although this eunuch Wu is acquainted with him, he might not know the other's true identity. At least, Mi Kongquan doesn't know eunuch Wu's background. This eunuch Wu has never shown his true combat power in front of Mi Kongquan. I've used all my forces in today's battle, including the 3 Eclipse Panthers and myself. In the end, I could only kill eunuch Wu with a Pyrrhic victory. It's truly remarkable. And this is only the 15th of the 8th month of the Hall of Autumn. Yin Yang felt the terror from the bottom of his heart. Although he had won the battle in the end, he had also paid a hefty price for using the Fog of Cloud Conjuration to counter eunuch Wu's desperate attack. In addition, the 2 junior leopards needed to be healed. Yin Yang went into closed-door cultivation immediately, channeling the air of vitality to heal them. Fang Mafei and Lao Mei found a secluded spot to meditate in the yard. Occasionally, they would open their eyes, feeling their blood boiling. Supreme Cloud. The young master was actually Supreme Cloud. This piece of news was still like a thunderclap, rumbling in the minds of the 2 people. Yin Yang did not say anything more, but both of them chose to keep their mouths shut. What was Supreme Cloud's identity? Was there even a need to ask? This secret was enough to shake the entire continent. Once it was leaked, the consequences would be dire. What I yearn to see the most is the moment young master soars into the sky with the power of a hidden dragon. Fang Mafei and Lao Mei had the same thought. Just the thought of that moment made them tremble with excitement. However, the young master was Supreme Cloud. Then, the young master's enemy would be the entire continent. All the strong cultivators of the continent. No wonder young master always said that he was not capable enough, that he despised his slow progress. So this was the truth. Following young master, we need to improve our capabilities. This was a must. Therefore, both of them had entered a state of desperation that they had never experienced before in their cultivation. When he woke up the next day, Yun Yang felt his body relax, his injuries fully healed. As for the 2 Eclipse Panthers, the one with the heaviest injuries had mostly recovered, while the other was completely healed. Not slow. Yin Yang opened the message sent by the 9 Heavens dictum. No ripples at all. Yin Yang's brows slowly furrowed as he looked at the information he had gathered from all over the place. This did not seem to be normal. So many major incidents had happened in these few days. From the incident with Shui Yuehan and the others to Fu Guansan, all the way until now with Mi Kongquan's incident. The accumulation of these incidents had not stirred up any ripples at all. Logically speaking, if it was just the imperial court, the residents of imperial justice, the board of justice, a few princes, and even the civil, military and political parties in the imperial court, when the censors were at their fiercest, they should be attacking each other. You attack while I defend, it was a back-and-forth tussle. Slowly digging forward amidst such disputes was the right thing to do. However, now, such a major incident had not stirred up any ripples at all. What did this mean? It meant that all these incidents that should have happened had been suppressed by a large hand. Suppressed forcefully. However, who in the capital city had such power? Yin Yang sucked in a deep breath. No matter what, the Cirrus House's incident could finally come to an end. As long as these 4 popinjays were still in Tiantang, the Four Seasons Tower would not dare to act recklessly, at least for the time being. After all, 5 people had been killed in the Cirrus House's incident. Just the follow-up countermeasures alone would take them some time to think. Finally, I can relax. Just as Yun Yang was thinking about this, tens of thousands of miles away, on a cliff shrouded in clouds and mist, a man dressed in gray sat there quietly. 5 to 6 thick iron chains hung on his body, dark red in color. In the middle of them were strips of dark red mystical beast tendons. 2 chains passed through his shoulders and shoulder blades. The 3rd chain passed through his chest and wrapped around his spine. Then it extended out into a bottomless cave. Even so, it was not enough. There was a similar chain on each of his legs. One could only imagine the torment this man had endured. Right now, he was sitting in front of the stone table with a tranquil expression, slowly making tea and drinking tea. Facing the dense and impenetrable sea of clouds, he still had a calm expression on his face. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.